Hey guys. Tonight, you're not tucking in. You're propping up. The air in your house is thick enough to chew. The straw in your bed is hosting flea festivals, and somewhere above you, a rat is planning its midnight banquet. You'd think sleep is supposed to be rest, but in medieval times, it was more like playing defense against everything from suffocation to scandal. And lying flat, that was practically asking for death to pull up a chair. But before you get too cozy, take a second to gently tap that new hype button YouTube just added. It really does help little guys like me push through the algorithm. And take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy this strange little corner of quiet storytelling. And drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's strangely comforting to know who else is drifting off with us around the world. Now get comfortable, let the day melt away, and we'll drift back together into the quiet corners of the past. You're told to sleep sitting up because otherwise demons will crawl into your throat while you dream. That's the bedtime wisdom passed down from your grandmother, who also believes onions in your socks cure plague and that cats are spies of the devil. You don't know which is worse, the possibility of nightly demonic possession or the reality of your bed. Calling it a bed is generous. It's a wooden box lined with straw so scratchy it might as well be shards of old broom bristles. Fleas have unionized inside it and throw late-night feasts. When you shift, the whole thing creaks like a coffin lid. And of course, coffins are where people lie flat. Which means lying flat is not only uncomfortable, it makes you look suspiciously corpse-like. So you prop yourself against the wall, back crooked, knees half bent, chin dipping toward your chest, and you try to convince yourself this counts as restful. Your neighbor swears by it. He says demons slide down straight throats like children on laundry chutes, but a bent throat confuses them. They get lost somewhere between your tonsils and your digestion, and with luck, they give up. You don't know if that's true, but you do know the last man who tried to lie flat ended up choking so loudly that half the village came to his hut to see if Satan himself was playing the bagpipes in there. The priest reinforces the point every Sunday. From the pulpit, he warns the congregation not to be found horizontal when the devil prowls in darkness. God prefers his faithful in postures of vigilance, he says. Sitting up proves you're ready for prayer, or at least ready to sprint outside when the pigs break through the fence again. If you die flat, it's hard to argue you weren't lazy about it. So you sit up, head wobbling, pretending that piety and exhaustion are the same thing. Meanwhile, your stomach doesn't help. Dinner was bread baked to the density of a roof tile, washed down with 3 mugs of ale so sour it stripped the enamel off your teeth. Try lying flat with that bubbling inside you. Your insides protest immediately, rising like a brewing thunderstorm. Upright, though, you can burp discreetly, like a noble. Flat, you're one groan away from being mistaken for possessed. Your family all sits the same way, shoulders bumping, nodding off like weary chess pieces. The children curl awkwardly on laps, because children can sleep anywhere. The goat, for reasons unknown, has claimed a corner of the bed box and seems perfectly content standing while dozing. You envy the goat. You'd trade anything for goat knees right now. Every sound in the night justifies your posture. A creak on the stair, a mouse in the rafters, a rooster having an existential crisis at 2 a.m, you're already upright enough to open your eyes and scan the darkness. If you were lying down, by the time you rolled over, the intruder, whether man, beast, or minor demon, would have stolen the last of your turnips. This way, you're alert, alertish. Your neck aches, but at least your throat feels guarded. You wonder what a demon even looks like when it tries to crawl inside someone. Do they wriggle like eels? Do they knock politely? The old gossip at the well swears she saw one once, a black shadow crouched on a sleeping man's chest, squeezing his breath out. But then again, that gossip also insists the miller's wife gave birth to twins after staring too long at a pair of apples, so her credibility is flexible. Still, you play it safe. You tug the blanket around your shoulders and try to ignore the straw stabbing your legs. A flea bites your ankle, but you keep your eyes closed. If the demons want to argue, they'll have to contend with your fortress of vertebrae and your heroic slump. Better to wake stiff and sore than to wake with your soul half swallowed. Outside, the wind rattles the shutters. The moon glares through a crack in the roof as if judging your posture. You whisper a prayer under your breath, not sure if you're addressing God, the Virgin, or whichever spirit happens to be on night duty. All you ask is simple: let you make it to dawn without choking on your own breath or waking up with hoofprints on your chest. It's not comfortable, but it's survival. And besides, comfort is a luxury for nobles who can afford feathers in their mattresses and perfumed pillows under their chins. For you, it's sit up or face the darkness. And as far as you're concerned, demons have enough easy meals already. Tonight, they're not getting yours. Your bed is a wooden box, and even calling it a bed feels like lying to yourself. 4 planks hammered together by someone who clearly had a grudge against comfort, filled with straw that scratches every inch of exposed skin like it's trying to remind you that you're alive. Each time you shift, the straw breaks into little needles that poke your thighs and calves, and you start to wonder if this is sleep or a punishment devised by a particularly vindictive saint. The fleas thrive in here, treating your scalp as their favorite tavern, dancing and drinking and biting like it's festival season all year round. You scratch until your nails are black with dust, but they're still there, toasting each other on the red patches of your skin. The walls don't help. They lean inward, slanting so close it feels as though the house itself is glaring at you, disappointed in your choices. If walls could be in-laws, these would be the kind that scowl when you take too much stew at dinner, or remind you loudly that their daughter deserved better. They creak at night as the wind pushes against the roof, muttering their disapproval in long groans. Every sound becomes a reminder that you are boxed in, lying inside something that feels less like a bedroom and more like a badly built coffin. Still, this is home, and home means the draft that sneaks under the door and rattles across the floorboards like a spirit looking for warmer company. You huddle into the wooden box, tucking your knees up because stretching out means jabbing your toes against the rough planks. There is no good position, only a rotation of slightly less miserable ones. If you curl sideways, the straw tickles your nose. If you lean back, the wall jabs your spine. Upright is preferable, though only because your body eventually gives up complaining and lets your mind wander. The smell is something you can't ignore. Straw never smells clean, especially when it's mixed with sweat, dirt, and whatever dampness has been seeping through the cracks in the roof. It's not the sweet smell of a hayloft. It's the sour, heavy scent of too many nights lived in the same clothes. Every so often, you catch the faint musk of the goat that decided to climb into the box last winter and hasn't been properly washed out since. You live inside a stew of smells, each layer another reminder that bathing is an event, not a routine. When you close your eyes, the noises grow louder. Someone in the corner snores like a saw hitting a knot in wood. A child mumbles in their sleep, dreaming of turnips probably, while the baby cries briefly before being hushed with a finger dipped in ale. Outside, dogs bark at shadows, and the rooster mutters to himself about when dawn should come. You try to find stillness in the middle of it all, though the fleas make sure stillness never lasts more than a minute. Their tiny jaws keep you company, just in case the rest of the night felt too peaceful. Sometimes you think of the nobles, the ones with feather mattresses and hangings around their beds to block the cold. You imagine sinking into down, your body vanishing into softness, the air perfumed with herbs instead of smoke. Then the straw jabs your side, a flea bites your wrist, and you remember that dreaming about feather beds is about as useful as dreaming about flying. Better to focus on the reality that your box holds you up off the dirt floor, where the damp and the rats would gladly welcome you if you tried to lie there. Your body adjusts to misery because it has no other choice. By the time sleep finally tugs at you, you are half upright, head lolling forward, arms crossed tightly. You tell yourself it's safer this way, that sitting up keeps away the demons everyone warns you about. Maybe the fleas are too busy celebrating to notice them, or maybe the demons take one look at your wooden box and assume you've been punished enough. Either way, you drift into that shallow, twitching sleep, trapped between discomfort and exhaustion. The walls lean closer, the straw scratches deeper, the fleas keep biting, but it's all part of the same rhythm. This is where you live, where you lie, where you rise again with the morning bell. Your bed is not comfort. Your bed is survival. And for now, that has to be enough. The air in your house does not move so much as it broods. It squats low and heavy, like an angry relative who refuses to leave after supper. Smoke from the hearth clings to the rafters, then slumps downward until it thickens in your chest. You breathe shallowly, each inhale tasting of ash and boiled cabbage, and you wonder if this is what drowning feels like. Except instead of water, it's soup made from soot, grease, and yesterday's stew vapors. Sitting up keeps your nose just high enough to skim the thinnest line of breathable air. Lying flat is an invitation to suffocate in your own home, a slow descent into a broth you never asked to be part of. The fire should help, but instead, it makes everything worse. Logs burn reluctantly, filling the room with more smoke than warmth. Sparks leap out like mischievous spirits, and someone always mutters a prayer when they see them, because sparks are known omens. The chimney, if you can call it that, is more hole than structure, and tonight it's decided to do its job half-heartedly. Smoke curls back inside, swirls over your head, and joins the cloud of already spent air that has nowhere else to go. You cough into your sleeve, which only makes your sleeve smell like smoke too, and the cycle continues. The children whimper because the air makes their eyes sting, but no one opens the shutters. Opening them means freezing gusts, the kind that turn your skin blue before the rooster crows. Better to choke a little than freeze completely. That's the logic everyone repeats, though the choice hardly feels logical at all. Still, you stay shut in with the fog, blinking through the haze, convincing yourself you'll get used to it soon. You never do. Every corner of the room has absorbed the smell. The straw mattress reeks of it. The clothes hanging on pegs are soaked through with it. Even the bread tastes faintly of it, as though the smoke has opinions about your supper too. The walls seem to exhale smoke back at you when you lean against them, as though the house itself is sharing its sour breath. You wonder if your lungs are turning black like the ceiling beams, coated in a permanent film of soot. The neighbors insist this is healthy. They say the smoke drives out pests, that it preserves meat hung from the rafters, that it purifies the soul by constant trial. You're not sure which pests they mean, since fleas and lice are thriving just fine in your hair. Maybe it drives out demons, but if so, the demons are clever enough to circle back through the chimney. You can almost hear them laughing every time you choke on the air, their claws scraping delightfully against your ribs. You adjust your posture, spine stiff against the wall, chin tilted upward into the shallow pocket of clearer air. It's not much, but it keeps your chest from rattling. Every time you're tempted to lie down and stretch your back, your throat reminds you with a rasp that drowning in smoke is closer than you think. Sitting upright isn't comfort, it's survival. A quiet gamble that the air 5 inches higher is just pure enough to carry you through the night. Your eyes water as you drift towards sleep. Each tear carves a clean line through the grime on your cheeks. But even the tears sting in this atmosphere, as though smoke has claimed the water in your body too. Shadows flicker across the walls as the fire sputters, and for a moment the smoke shapes itself into faces, grimacing, whispering, leaning toward you with foul breath. You blink and they dissolve, but the heaviness remains, pressing you into your seat as though you're no longer a person but another log on the fire. Outside, the wind moans through the gaps in the roof tiles, reminding you that fresh air exists somewhere, but not here. Here you live suspended in a thick stew of your own making, lungs simmering quietly until morning. And so you sit, head bowed but never fully reclined, waiting for sleep to find you in the narrow space between suffocation and survival. Dinner sits in your stomach like a brick with sharp edges. You told yourself one more hunk of bread would help soak up the ale, but the bread is dense enough to patch a castle wall, and the ale was sour enough to etch lines into your tongue. Now the two are waging war in your gut, and you are the battlefield. If you dared to lie flat, the combined forces of grain and brew would march upward, choking you in your sleep and leaving your soul halfway to purgatory. So you sit upright, clutching your middle, rocking slightly like an overfed hen. The bread had looked harmless at first. Fresh from the oven, still steaming, its crust cracked and golden, but every bite revealed its true nature. Compact, heavy, closer to geology than cuisine. By the time you finished, you were certain you had consumed an entire field's worth of rye compressed into a single loaf. Then came the ale, dark and foamy, poured into wooden mugs that never seemed to run empty. One sip became three became seven, and before long you were laughing too loudly at a cousin's joke about turnips, forgetting that ale turns to acid the moment it reaches your stomach. Your head buzzes as the heat spreads downward. It's not the pleasant warmth of a feast, but the boiling churn of regret and barley. Each gurgle is a warning. Lying down now would be like pulling the pin on a grenade and hugging it to your chest. So you plant yourself in the corner of your bed box, spine stiff, eyes half closed, mouth tasting of stale yeast. Every time you swallow, you swear the bread is still rising inside you, fermenting into a new loaf. The others in the room are no better. Your uncle snores from across the pallet, belly distended, chest wheezing. Every exhale smells faintly of onions and despair. A child shifts in her sleep and mutters something about cheese, her tiny stomach making noises far too large for her body. The goat chews serenely on something in the shadows, immune to indigestion, smug in its superiority. You glare at the goat, but it only stares back, as if to say, "You chose the bread, I chose wisdom." Your mind wanders to the noble folk again, those with lighter food and finer wine, who probably drift into feather beds with full bellies that somehow never betray them. You imagine lying down like they do, stretching out luxuriously, sighing into soft pillows. Then your stomach lurches, and the fantasy ends abruptly, reminding you that nobles may have luxury, but you have survival instincts. And survival means staying upright until dawn, no matter how heavy your eyelids grow. The room stinks of digestion, everyone exhaling sour air into the smoky atmosphere. It mixes with the crackling fire's smoke, creating a stew of scents that could knock out a lesser creature. You breathe carefully, shallow sips, wary of disturbing the bread brick lodged inside you. The ale sloshes, restless, daring you to recline. Your body answers by hiccuping violently, the kind that rattles your ribs and makes the children stir in their sleep. You hold your breath until it passes, whispering a silent oath never to overeat again, though you know tomorrow you'll do it all over. Minutes stretch into hours, each one measured by the slow burn in your gut. Sometimes you think you hear the bread groan, a tectonic shifting deep inside. Other times, the ale bubbles loud enough that you wonder if your stomach has turned into a brewer's vat. You clutch your sides, squeeze your eyes shut, and rock slightly in your seat, praying for the dawn to arrive quickly. There is no comfort, only endurance, upright, stiff, aching. You endure because the alternative is unthinkable. To lie flat is to invite death by bread and ale, a foolish obituary waiting to be written. So, you sit through the night, body a furnace, eyes watering, mind drifting in and out of shallow dreams. And when morning finally comes, you will rise, bleary and sour, pretending you've learned your lesson, even as the smell of fresh bread lures you once more. The rafters above your head are never empty. By day, the beams look innocent enough, lined with cobwebs and dust, a few tools hanging where someone swore they wouldn't forget them. But by night, the beams belong to other tenants, sleek shadows with twitching whiskers, claws clicking against the wood as they patrol like tiny soldiers on their rounds. The rats are always watching, always listening, their eyes catching the firelight and flashing back like dull coins. If you dare to lie flat, you know what you become. The banquet spread beneath their feet, the warm buffet served nightly, a body draped like a feast table waiting for guests. You hear them before you see them. Soft scurrying that quickens into little scrapes, tails slapping wood, a hiss of movement darting from one side of the roof to the other. Sometimes it's only 2 or 3. Sometimes it's a whole army, a squeaking chorus that makes you clutch your blanket tighter. You tilt your head back to watch, chin raised, eyes narrowed, trying to spot where the largest one will appear. It always seems to be the same rat, fat and bold, strutting the beam directly above your bed box like a landlord inspecting his property. He pauses, stares down at you, nose twitching, and you feel his judgment in the way he licks his teeth. Sitting upright is the only defense. Upright, you can swat, you can hiss back, you can glare into their beady eyes as if to say, "Not tonight." Flat, you're helpless. Your chest rises and falls like a signal. Your throat is exposed, your hands too busy fending off the straw to reach for a weapon. The rats know this. They've studied you. Their entire strategy relies on your fatigue, waiting for the moment you give in to sleep, when your arms slacken and your head tips sideways. That's when they'll descend, bold as saints in a procession, and claim whatever crumbs or morsels you've forgotten in your bed. Maybe they'll take more than crumbs. You remember stories whispered at the well, of babies found with tiny bite marks on their cheeks, of drunks too deep in ale to notice the nibbling until morning. The women shake their heads and cross themselves, but they all know it happens. In the dark, every sleeper looks like a meal, and the rats aren't picky. That thought alone keeps your spine rigid, even when your body aches to lie back and stretch. Better to ache than to wake with whiskers brushing your lips. The goat shifts in the corner, stamping its hoof, and the sound startles the rats into silence. For a moment, all you hear is your own breathing, ragged and shallow, as if you're trying not to attract attention. Then the scratching begins again, slower this time, more deliberate. You imagine them dragging tiny claws through dust, drawing maps of the house, planning routes like seasoned thieves. Perhaps they even have names for you: the big one who snores, the restless one with twitching legs, the easy one who drops crumbs every night. You don't want to know which nickname is yours. One scurries so close to the wall above that flecks of grit fall into your hair. You slap at it wildly, sending straw flying, while your cousin mumbles something in his sleep and turns over. How can anyone sleep through this? How can anyone trust the night enough to flatten themselves out, arms wide, practically gift-wrapping their body for the rodents? You curse softly under your breath, wishing you had a cat, though cats themselves are sometimes too lazy to do anything about the rafters. At least a cat's presence might make the rats hesitate, even if only for show. The fire pops below, lighting up the underside of the beams, and for a brief second you see a line of silhouettes, tails curling, bodies pressed close, eyes glowing like tiny lanterns. You realize there are more of them than you thought, an entire congregation gathered above, waiting. You shiver and pull the blanket tighter, even though the blanket itself smells faintly of grain, which probably doesn't help. The air feels thick, not with smoke this time, but with the certainty that you're outnumbered. And so you stay sitting, head bobbing, body aching, fighting against sleep, because you know the moment you yield, the rafters will come alive. Survival is a contest here, not against wolves or bandits, but against the small, persistent gnawing things that never leave. The rats will always win if you lie down. Sitting upright doesn't make you comfortable, but it makes you harder to eat. Tonight, that has to be enough. The stories about the night hags start when the sun sets. Old women at the well tell them as if they're passing on family recipes, But instead of flour and butter, it's details of clawed fingers and breath like rotten milk. Everyone swears that lying down flat is an invitation, that the hags see you stretched out like a feast table and swoop down without warning. Children get told to sit up to pray before sleep, but really, it's so they stay half upright, neck bent, eyes darting at the shadows. Nobody calls it fear. They call it caution, like putting a lid on the stew so flies don't lay eggs in it. You've never seen a night hag yourself, but you've heard plenty. They sit on your chest, everyone says, pinning you so you can't move, their bony knees digging into your ribs. Their hair falls over your face, thick and greasy, and they lean in close to hiss nonsense into your ears until your lungs can't pull in air. Some people claim they've woken to see yellow eyes staring down at them. Others swear the hag feels like a cat, but heavier, colder, and alive in a way no animal should be. A few laugh off the stories in daylight. But when night comes, even they prop themselves up with elbows or sleep sitting against the wall, like saints in an icon. The priest preaches about vigilance, that sitting upright keeps your soul alert. He never says the word hag out loud inside the church, but everyone knows what he means. The hags aren't just creatures. They're punishments, sent for gluttons and sinners, for those who let their guard down. And yet, every household has at least one story of a cousin or neighbor struck while they were as holy as can be, muttering prayers before bed, only to wake clawing at the air, eyes bulging, face purple from lack of breath. Holiness doesn't seem to be much protection when your back is flat to the ground. Tonight, the stories echo in your head as you shift in your wooden box. Smoke curls low, the rafters creak, and each sound feels like a whisper from the other side. You lean your head against the wall, keeping your throat bent and your chest lifted, one hand gripping the blanket as though you're ready to fend off claws. Your stomach still churns from supper, but that's nothing compared to the creeping dread that slinks across the floor when the fire burns low. It's always when the flames die that the air grows colder, and you imagine something moving just beyond the edge of sight. Your cousin mumbles in his sleep, rolling onto his back, and you tense. Even the rats pause above, claws silent on the beams. He's perfectly flat now, arms spread, mouth open, inviting whatever lurks to come and press the breath out of him. You half want to shake him upright, but don't dare move. In every story, the hag comes when someone makes a sound. Better to hold still, eyes open, heart hammering, watching the room as if it might sprout fangs. The goats shift, the baby coughs, and you think you see a shape in the smoke, thin and crooked, gliding closer on nothing at all. It's gone before you can blink, but your skin prickles as if you've been brushed by a cold hand. You cross yourself twice, muttering words you don't remember learning, and tighten your grip on the blanket. Sitting upright doesn't stop the fear, but it makes you feel like you're braced for it, like you've built a small barricade with your own body. This is how everyone sleeps here. Not resting, but waiting. Backs curved, heads bowed, lungs straining in the stale air, hoping dawn will come before the night has its way with you. The hags, whether real or just stories, shape every movement, every posture, every twitch of your eyes in the darkness. No one dares test them. No one lies down flat and tempts whatever is out there to prove the old women wrong. You sit, stiff and aching, and pray to wake still breathing. You learn early that lying flat carries a certain danger, and not just the kind with choking ghosts. Corpses lie flat. Every funeral you've ever seen, the body is stretched stiff on a board or in a box, arms folded neatly like they're praying, though you know perfectly well they aren't praying anymore. It's the posture of the dead, the final position before the earth takes you. So when you sprawl out, back against the straw, arms limp, the resemblance is hard to ignore. To sleep flat is to imitate the corpse, and people don't like imitations of death when real death is always so close by. The old women mutter about it constantly. They say if you lie flat, you invite death himself to mistake you for his property. He strolls past in the night, scythe over his shoulder, sees you stretched out like a finished job, and shrugs. Why argue? He scoops up your soul and carries it off, and when morning comes, your family will swear they saw no struggle at all. Just you lying peacefully, as if you'd been practicing for the grave all along. That idea sticks with you every time you think about stretching out. Sitting up is uncomfortable, yes, but no one ever mistakes the living for corpses when they're propped like gargoyles. Wakes don't help matters. You've seen them. The body laid flat on the table, candles flickering, bread and ale set nearby for the mourners. People gather to poke and whisper, shaking their heads at how restful the dead look. Too restful. You remember staring at your uncle's body once, pale and rigid, and thinking how similar he looked to yourself when you accidentally dozed off flat after too much stew. The thought made you bolt upright so fast you knocked the bench over. Even in grief, your family agreed it was wise. You don't want to tempt confusion. Children whisper it too, daring each other to try lying down and closing their eyes. See, you look dead already. They giggle, until an elder smacks them on the back of the head and orders them to sit up straight. Even the goats seem to know better. They collapse in odd shapes, always with their legs tucked under, never flat. Maybe they know death doesn't want to mistake them for people, but still, their posture looks more alert, less like surrender. At night, when the room quiets, you can't escape the comparison. If you lie back, your arms slide across your chest of their own accord, and the blanket falls heavy over you like a shroud. Your breathing slows, and in the smoky dark, it's easy to imagine someone walking in and mistaking you for gone. You can even picture the whispers. Well, he looked tired yesterday. Didn't he eat a little too much bread? Guess it was his time. And then it's not sleep you're in, but a coffin, nails hammered in, earth tumbling down. So you sit, half dozing, half aching, head nodding onto your shoulder. Everyone else does the same, packed together in crooked rows like birds on a wire. The air reeks of smoke and sour ale, but no one dares recline fully. You're all guarding against that single slip into the pose of the dead, that silent imitation that might lure death too close. When the fire burns low and the rafters creak, you keep your chin lifted just enough to prove you're not finished yet. You're tired, yes, but you're still here. Morning will come, and you'll stand again, hunched but breathing, ready to grumble about the aches in your back. Better to ache alive than to lie too flat and find yourself mistaken for a corpse. Because in a place where the line between life and death is already thin, posture is more than habit. It's a declaration. You are not ready for the funeral board. Not tonight. Snoring is not just snoring here. A rasping, rattling noise in the night doesn't mean someone ate too quickly or drank too much ale. It means demons have taken a seat in their chest. Everyone knows this. Everyone says it with certainty, like they're talking about the weather. If you wake up gagging in the dark, throat clamped tight, chest heaving like a bellows that won't quite catch, nobody pats your back and says, "Ah, the barley stew struck again." No. They cross themselves quickly and whisper to each other. Possession. You learn this young, sitting by the fire as the elders recount tales of sleepers who snored so loudly it shook the rafters, only for their souls to be clawed half out of their bodies by morning. The sounds, they say, are not just breath. They're the hissing arguments of unseen spirits, fighting each other over the right to climb down your throat. A long rumble means a greedy demon. A sudden choke means it found a foothold. If you hear both, the story goes, it's already inside. Children shiver at the telling, but they still lean closer, the way you can't help but stare at a fire, even when it's burning your face. So when you fall asleep too heavily, belly swollen with rye bread and sour ale, the sounds that escape you are not harmless. A snore tears out of your throat like a saw through damp wood, and suddenly every head in the room snaps up. The baby whimpers, your cousin mutters a prayer, and someone actually throws a ladle in your direction to jolt you upright. You choke, cough, wave your arms, sputtering that it was only stew rising where it shouldn't. But no one listens. They only stare, wide-eyed, muttering that they saw your lips moving when they shouldn't, that they heard another voice inside your groan, low and guttural, not your own. Word spreads fast. By morning, the neighbors know you had demons in you, and by evening they're debating whether to sprinkle holy water on your pillow or just avoid sitting too close at the tavern. You try to explain, but explanations are useless against belief. No one remembers what you ate, but everyone remembers how you sounded. And once someone decides your snores were more growl than breath, you belong to the stories. It doesn't help that snores sound different in this house than anywhere else. The smoke thickens the air, clogging your throat so each inhale becomes a rattle. The straw shifts under your head, forcing your jaw into angles that twist sound into something unholy. Even the rafters echo strangely, bouncing noises back down into shapes that resemble groans or whispers. So it's no surprise, really, that people believe demons are crawling into you while you sleep. The whole room conspires to make it sound that way. Still, you sit upright, fighting against the pull of slumber, because the thought of being labeled possessed is worse than the cramps in your neck. You imagine waking in the night, choking again, and everyone grabbing the priest instead of a cup of water. You imagine their hands holding you down, their voices chanting, salt scattered across your brow, while you try to convince them it was just indigestion. Nobody ever won that argument. Once the demon theory takes root, it grows faster than weeds in spring. The irony is that the fear itself makes the snoring worse. You breathe shallowly, nervously, lungs half filled, and the tension in your chest makes each exhale rasp. The moment you drift, a snort escapes, and the cycle begins again. Eyes snapping open, ears pricked, heart racing as though you've caught yourself in the act of damnation. You tell yourself to relax, to trust your own body, but the memory of whispers at the well won't let you. If you sound like a demon, then in their minds, you are one. So you keep upright, half waking, half dreaming, waiting for morning. Your head wobbles, your shoulders ache, but at least you stay clear of suspicion. In this village, survival isn't just about fending off hunger or cold. It's about guarding your reputation while you sleep, making sure your breath never echoes like something otherworldly. Snoring is possession. Everyone swears it, and you don't want to give them reason to believe they're right. Your pillow is not a pillow at all. It is a burlap sack stuffed with grain, tied at the top with a knot that always finds a way to dig into your ear no matter how you turn it. The sack smells faintly of dust and mouse droppings, and when you press your face into it, you swear you can taste the harvest itself. Raw oats, bitter rye, the faint sourness of barley that's been stored too long. The sack is valuable food first, headrest second, and everyone reminds you of that when you complain. Better to sleep on dinner than eat your pillow, your mother says, and you nod as if that makes sense. It doesn't. When you try to lie flat, the grain shifts and slides, creating peaks and valleys that your neck cannot forgive. One moment you're craning upward at a sharp angle. The next your head sinks so deep you feel you've fallen into a ditch. Either way, you wake with your spine bent like a plow handle. The grain does not care about comfort. It rolls and tumbles, restless even in storage, mocking you with each kernel that digs into your scalp. Sitting upright spares you this. Upright, your head lolls forward, maybe sideways, but at least your neck bends only in ways it can recover from. Lying down on a grain sack is not sleep. It is medieval torture disguised as practicality. Sometimes, when the fire burns low and your body aches for softness, you imagine what a true pillow might feel like. Feathers, perhaps, gathered from geese, plump and white, stitched into cloth that smells of lavender. You picture yourself sinking into it, face cradled by down, waking refreshed instead of bruised. But then you remember that feathers are for nobles, for people who sleep in chambers with tapestries and guards outside the door. You are not noble. You are peasant, and peasants rest on food because survival never allows for luxury. There is always the danger of pests, too. The rats in the rafters know exactly where the grain sack rests. They peer down, twitching their noses, planning midnight raids. You lie awake, imagining them chewing straight through the sack while your head still rests upon it, tugging kernels from beneath your ear, brushing whiskers against your hair. Perhaps they whisper among themselves about how clever it is to wait until you lie flat, so that you are too deep in slumber to chase them away. This alone makes sitting upright the sensible choice. Better an aching neck than the sensation of a rat digging into your pillow for a snack. The sack also has moods. Some nights it feels soft enough, like a field before harvest, forgiving, and even other nights it clumps into odd shapes, stiff and unyielding, as though the grain has decided to conspire against you. You punch it, shake it, roll it, but nothing helps. It remains stubborn, an immovable reminder that comfort was never part of the bargain. You sigh, lean against the wall, and let your head dangle instead, because at least dangling doesn't insult you with false promises. Your neighbors talk about the same thing. At the well, one woman complains she woke with her neck so twisted she couldn't look left all day. Another insists that sitting upright against the wall saved her from headaches, though her back now feels like it belongs to a man twice her age. Everyone agrees that lying flat on a sack of grain is foolish. The only people who still try are children, too stubborn to believe their elders, until they wake crying with stiff necks and fleas in their ears. Then they learn quickly, because learning is not optional when your bedding doubles as your pantry, so you adapt. You treat the sack with respect, not as a pillow, but as food waiting its turn. You touch it lightly, adjust your posture, and keep yourself mostly upright. Your body aches for softness, but your mind knows better. The grain is not here for you. You are here for it. One day, it will be boiled into porridge, baked into bread, poured into mugs as ale. For now, it carries your head through the night with all the mercy of a stone, and you, slumped and crooked, accept that survival is rarely gentle. The watchman never misses his chance to remind people about the dangers of lying flat. Every evening when the sun dips behind the thatched roofs and the streets fill with shadows, his bell clangs and his voice booms across the square. "Sit upright, or you'll be dead before 30, he hollers, as though he's announcing market prices. His words echo through alleys and over rooftops, carrying into every crooked house until even the children mutter them in their sleep. It's not advice. It's a warning wrapped in smug satisfaction, because the watchman is 31 now, and alive, and he wants everyone to know it. He says it with a little smirk, too, the kind of expression that makes you want to throw a turnip at him. 31 is hardly ancient, but in a village where most people don't make it past their 40th winter, he struts as though he's Methuselah himself. "Flat sleepers don't last," he crows, slamming the butt of his staff against the cobbles. "I've outlived them all because I've never lain flat a night in my life." He puffs out his chest, which still carries the faint smell of last night's ale, and he dares anyone to argue. The truth is, no one does. People nod, mutter agreements, even though everyone knows he exaggerates. A few men mutter into their beards that his survival has less to do with posture and more to do with dumb luck. But they don't say it loudly, because if something were to happen to the watchman after such comments, everyone would swear the demons had come for him, and no one wants that guilt on their head. So they clap politely, wave him on, and adjust their own spines a little straighter as they prepare for bed. Children laugh at his warnings during the day, mocking his gait, chanting 31, 31, like it's a holy number. But at night, when the fires dim and the rafters creak, those same children huddle against the wall, legs tucked awkwardly, eyes darting at the ceiling beams. They've heard the stories, too, of cousins or neighbors who dared to sleep, stretched out, and were found blue and stiff the next morning, flat as a board and just as lifeless. The gossips whisper, wagging their fingers. It doesn't matter if the truth was fever or bad stew. Once someone dies lying flat, the lesson sticks. The watchman enjoys his role too much. He parades through the village at dawn, boasting about how he sat upright all night with only the moon for company. He pats his belly, broad and firm, as though to prove the method works. "See here," he says, "I'm stronger than the lot of you because I don't tempt death with a lazy spine." You roll your eyes, but secretly you wonder if he has a point. After all, he's living proof of his own philosophy. Each year he survives, the warning carries more weight. The irony is that he looks as tired as everyone else. His shoulders stoop, his eyes sag, and his steps are slow, as though his body aches from decades of stiff-backed slumber. But he won't admit it. To him, every ache is a badge of honor, proof he's not lying under 6 feet of soil. He claims he's seen death himself walking the lanes at night, scythe gleaming, searching for those who have made themselves horizontal offerings. Whether that's ale-fueled imagination or actual vision, no one knows, but it adds flair to his routine. So, you sit up when night comes, not only because of the smoke or the rats or the hags, but because the watchman's words are now stitched into your brain. You don't want to be the fool they gossip about at the well, the one who brought it on himself by lying flat. You sit crooked and stiff, head bobbing, neck aching, while the watchman's smug voice haunts your ears like another kind of demon. And when dawn arrives and the bell clangs again, there he is, alive for yet another day, grinning with all the arrogance of a man who has survived his own prophecy. You glare at him, but you also straighten your back just a little more, because you don't want to be the next example he brags about. You don't want to prove him right. The pallet is wide enough for one person if that person were made of sticks. Instead, it hosts you, 3 cousins, and a goat that insists on claiming the warmest spot. The straw beneath you all crunches, flattened by so many limbs and hooves, and the smell is a blend of sweat, wool, and whatever the goat ate earlier. There is no privacy. There is barely room to breathe. To lie flat here would be to invite a cousin's elbow in your ribs, the goat's hoof in your stomach, and the very real chance of suffocating under the combined weight of your family's dreams. Everyone knows the unspoken rules of bed sharing: knees tucked, arms folded close, breaths shallow, no sprawling. If you sit upright, you occupy less space, a polite vertical wedge between bodies. Upright means fewer collisions in the night, fewer arguments come morning about who drooled on whom. If you lie down, however, you immediately encroach. A cousin shifts, another rolls, and suddenly the whole pallet ripples like a pond, each body bumping into the next until someone yells and the goat bleats in protest. The goat, of course, observes no rules. It plops where it pleases, curling into a stubborn ball, kicking when disturbed. You once tried to push it off, but the goat planted itself so firmly you nearly toppled off instead. Now you accept its presence, because arguing with a goat at midnight is a fight no one wins. Besides, the goat snores less than your eldest cousin, whose nasal trumpet has been blamed for more than one imagined demon in the rafters. Heat builds quickly. So many bodies pressed together make the small room feel like a steaming bathhouse without the water. You try to lean back for a little air, but the moment you do, someone's head lolls onto your shoulder and pins you there. Sitting upright is less restful, but it at least keeps you from drowning in your cousin's hair. You keep your chin high, eyes half closed, balancing like a tired sentinel. Conversations always start before sleep, whispers in the dark about who saw what at the well, or who stole an extra crust of bread. The goat occasionally punctuates the chatter with a sneeze. The whispers fade into snores, and then the night is filled with the noises of shifting bodies and muffled complaints. Someone kicks, someone mumbles, someone laughs in their sleep. You remain upright, guarding your small scrap of space, breathing in shallow gulps of smoky air, hoping the night will pass without a fight breaking out. Arguments do happen. Once, your cousin stretched his legs across the pallet as if he were king of the straw, and chaos erupted. 3 of you shoved him. He shoved back, and the goat decided this was an invitation to join in by trampling across everyone's laps. The noise woke the baby in the next room, which brought your aunt storming in with curses and threats. After that night, the rule became clear. No one stretches out flat. Upright or curled, those are the only choices. You think sometimes of the nobles again, those who sleep alone in feathered beds large enough to roll 3 times without touching an edge. But then you imagine the silence, the emptiness, and you wonder if it might feel just as suffocating in its own way. At least here, pressed in with cousins and goat, you know, you're alive. Each bump, each accidental kick, each shared breath is proof of life in a world where death lingers too close. So you sit crooked, back against the wall, sharing warmth and space in equal measure. It isn't comfort, not really, but it's survival wrapped in noise and straw. The pallet groans beneath the weight, the goat shifts, a cousin mutters, and you breathe carefully, holding yourself upright, because in a bed this crowded, lying flat isn't rest, it's surrender. The old women at the well never miss a chance to talk about sleep, and not in a way that makes you feel rested. They squint at you as you pass, eyes sharp as knitting needles, and if they suspect you've been lying flat, the clucking begins. Flat sleepers, they hiss, are no better than beasts. To them, posture in bed isn't just about comfort or superstition, it's about morals. A straight spine and folded hands, sitting upright like a statue, proves you're virtuous. Slumping backward, arms sprawled, mouth open, that's how scandal begins. They whisper it between sips of watered wine, swapping stories like bread crusts. Did you hear about Marta's boy? Slept flat and now he's courting 2 girls at once. The baker's apprentice? Caught napping horizontal in broad daylight. No wonder he steals figs. According to the old women, every misdeed in the village starts with someone lying too comfortably on their back. Theft, adultery, laziness, even forgetting to bless yourself before sneezing. It all traces back to a moment when someone dared to stretch out instead of sitting up. Children absorb it like gospel. Parents bark at them if they lie too long after meals. Sit up, you'll turn wicked. A boy who stretches on the grass becomes a cautionary tale, doomed to grow into a drunkard or worse, a fiddler with loose morals. Girls especially are warned that lying flat makes them look willing, though no one explains willing for what. They just frown deeply and mutter about shame, while the girls shuffle awkwardly, cheeks burning, knees pulled up to their chins. Even the priest fans the flames. From the pulpit he reminds everyone that saints were painted upright, serene, vigilant, never stretched out like corpses or libertines. Upright posture, he insists, reflects an upright soul. And when he says this, the old women in the front pew nod so fiercely their headscarves almost fall off, their eyes darting toward anyone known to favor a long nap. You slouch even a little during the sermon, and the entire congregation will be talking about your sins by supper. Nighttime becomes a performance of virtue. Families pack together in their straw pallets, each person stiff as a board but tilted just enough to look alive and respectable. The goat sprawls flat, hooves in the air, but no one judges the goat. It has no morals to lose. You, however, must keep your chin tucked, your eyes half-lidded, your back upright, as though angels are keeping tally marks on your spine. Sleep becomes less about rest and more about reputation. And reputation is fragile. One morning, your cousin oversleeps lying flat, mouth agape, hair tangled across his face. By evening, 3 women at the well are convinced he's been visited by sinful dreams. By the next day, they're whispering that he stole eggs from the neighbor's henhouse. By the end of the week, the story has grown into full heresy, complete with visions of demons dancing on his chest, all because he slept the wrong way for one night. So you obey the rule. You sit upright, shoulders aching, head wobbling, because better pain than scandal, better tired eyes than wagging tongues. You imagine your name rolling off their lips, stretched and twisted into something unrecognizable, and you know it all starts with how you choose to arrange your body in the dark. Flat sleepers are dangerous. Upright sleepers are respectable. That's the way of things, and no one dares to test it. The old women are always watching, even when they're not in the room. Their voices echo in your head as you drift off against the wall, warning that posture is destiny. So you doze with your chin on your chest, back stiff, knees tucked, a model of moral endurance. Because in this village, it's not demons you fear most at night. It's gossip, and gossip never sleeps flat. The ritual of night always begins with prayers, and prayers always begin on your knees. The floor is cold stone or creaking wood, and it bites into your bones until your legs feel hollow. You clasp your hands, bow your head, whisper words you've known since childhood, words you sometimes jumble because your mouth is too tired to keep up with your memory. The candle sputters beside you, throwing shadows across the wall, shadows that stretch and lurch like waiting spirits. For a moment, you feel holy, or at least you pretend you do, because holiness is safer than admitting you're just exhausted. Kneeling turns quickly into sitting, though. At first, it's a small cheat. Your backside hovers closer to your heels, your spine slouches, your elbows rest on your thighs. You tell yourself it's still prayer, still piety, even though you're now half collapsed. The words grow softer, less distinct, until they're closer to sighs than petitions. But everyone does this. No one in your house makes it through the full prayer on their knees without wobbling sideways into a sit. God surely knows you're tired. God surely forgives shortcuts taken in smoke-filled rooms after long days. Standing would be better, or so the priest says, but standing is impossible. Standing after a day of hauling water, grinding grain, chasing goats, or scrubbing clothes in icy streams, your legs simply refuse. Standing is for saints carved into stone, for noblemen parading at ceremonies, not for peasants who've spent all daylight bent like sickles. You know this. God must know this too, so you don't even try. Upright sitting is the compromise, the middle road between reverence and survival. Sometimes, your prayers blur into the noises around you. A cousin coughs, the goat shifts in the corner, your stomach grumbles, and all of it mixes with the rhythm of your muttering. You pray for protection from demons, for relief from smoke, for strength to survive another winter, though mostly you pray the bread won't turn to stones in your gut by morning. The words slip out in half-finished sentences, the kind where God is expected to fill in the blanks. You trust he understands shorthand. The old women at the well gossip about who prays sitting and who prays kneeling, but everyone knows they sit too when no one is looking. They pretend their spines are iron rods, but their bodies betray them like yours does. You've caught them leaning against the well's edge mid-Hail Mary, eyes half shut, voices barely audible. They're no different from the rest of you, except they'll never admit it. The candle burns lower. Your head tilts forward until your chin brushes your chest, and the line between prayer and dozing becomes thin. Is nodding off mid-prayer sinful? Maybe. But if the saints never had to share a pallet with cousins and goats, they wouldn't judge. You murmur one last line, words so slurred they could be blessing or curse, then let silence settle around you. Sitting up, half slumped, becomes your final position. You tell yourself it's still prayerful, that God sees your bent neck and interprets it as humility instead of exhaustion. Your back aches, your knees throb, but you refuse to sprawl flat. That would undo everything, shift you from holy into scandalous, from upright into corpse-like. So you stay crooked and stiff, clinging to the posture of someone still trying, still reaching upward even as sleep drags you down. And in that posture, you drift, balanced between devotion and fatigue. Not kneeling anymore, not standing, but sitting, because sitting is all your body has left to give. It always begins with the bell, a dull clang out in the lane, muffled by walls and smoke, the kind of sound that makes the dogs stir and the children hide under blankets. The priest walks with a lantern swaying from his hand, the light catching his pale face and hollow eyes, as if he hasn't slept in years. He insists it's his duty to make rounds at night, to ensure no one is courting sin while the village slumbers, which really means he barges in unannounced, sniffing the air like a hound, peering at every crooked body to see if it's bent toward heaven or stretched toward scandal. When the door creaks open and the lantern glow spills across the room, everyone instinctively stiffens. Heads jerk upright, spines straighten, eyes flutter open just enough to prove you're not lying flat in sinful abandon. The cousins mutter and pretend they were praying even in their sleep. You sit bolt upright against the wall, heart racing, blanket clutched tightly, face arranged into what you hope passes for piety. Even the goat, sensing authority, adjusts itself into a seated pose, chewing hay like a holy witness. The priest scans the room, his shadow looming longer than any man's ought to. His gaze lingers on every pair of shoulders, every bowed head, every chest still rising and falling with effort. If someone dares to be horizontal, he clears his throat in a way that rattles the rafters, and the offender jerks upright as if dragged by unseen strings. He never says much, just mutters a blessing, waves his hand, sprinkles a drop of water from the little flask he keeps tucked in his cloak. But the silence he carries, the weight of his inspection, is enough to make you feel judged even if you've done nothing. You tell yourself he is looking for holiness, that he wants reassurance his flock is vigilant against demons. But part of you suspects he enjoys it, the power of appearing in the darkest hour, lantern raised, watching people twitch with guilt, for nothing more than the way their heads tilted. His expression is always the same, not quite frown, not quite smile, something between pity and triumph. The expression of a man who knows you'll all gossip about his visit tomorrow, and that the gossip will only make his authority thicker. Sitting upright makes you look holy, or so they say. A bowed head is reverence, a bent spine is humility, and a crooked doze against the wall is close enough to meditation that no one dares call it sin. Flat, though, that's corpse posture, lazy posture, lustful posture, take your pick. Flat is where demons find their way in, and the priest is there to make sure you remember it. So you endure the aches, your legs numb, your neck stiff, because better pain than suspicion. He lingers longer than necessary, always. He adjusts his lantern, sighs, mutters something about vigilance, as if savoring the moment before leaving you all to your discomfort. When he finally turns and disappears into the night, the door shutting behind him, the whole room exhales at once. Children giggle nervously. The goat collapses sideways with relief, and someone curses under their breath about priests who don't know when to sleep. But no one dares lie down again, not after that. You stay upright, half numb, heart still drumming from the sudden inspection. You tell yourself it's only for appearances, that the priest has no real power over how you choose to rest. Yet you don't lie back. You can't. Because if he were to return, and he found you flat, you'd be the next tale spun at the well. The example worked into a sermon, the warning whispered to children about how quickly virtue slips when you tempt the night. And so you stay seated, body folded into discomfort, eyelids heavy. You look holy enough. And in this village, looking holy often matters more than being holy. You're told that posture is more than comfort, more than habit. It's geometry, divine geometry, the kind that keeps the prayed world stitched together. Sit upright, and your body forms a line pointing heavenward, a human arrow aimed at salvation. Angels, so the story goes, notice this sort of thing. They glance down, see your spine like a cathedral pillar, and nod in approval. Lying flat, though? That's another kind of alignment entirely. Stretch yourself along the floorboards, and you've made yourself parallel with the earth, and the earth doesn't forget who it belongs to. Worms, rot, everything that gnaws quietly in the soil, waiting its turn. The priest explains it in sermons with chalk drawings, circles and triangles on a slab of slate. He hammers the staff against the floor for emphasis, reminding everyone that upright posture carries your prayers upward like smoke. Your spines are ladders for the soul, he declares, eyes flashing. Would you make your ladder horizontal? Would you crawl into the ground before your time? The congregation shakes their heads, ashamed to even imagine it, though some shift uneasily, remembering nights they let their bodies collapse. Even small indulgences feel like moral failures when described in chalk and thunder. Children repeat the lesson in the streets, mocking each other with chants. You're flat. You're flat. The worms will have you for supper. They push each other into the mud, laughing until someone's mother yanks them up by the ear and scolds them for tempting fate. But the fear lingers. Even play carries the sting of warning. The geometry pressed into you so deeply that each time you try to stretch out on the grass, you hear whispers of worms writhing just below. At night, the geometry presses itself against your bones. Sitting upright, you feel righteous, though tired, your back aching with the strain of pretending to be holy architecture. Lying flat, though. Lying flat makes you picture soil piling on top of you, a spade striking the ground, the slow creep of roots wrapping your ankles. It's not just sleep anymore. It's rehearsal. You fold your knees quickly, lean back against the wall, force your body into an angle that might please the heavens. You may not dream sweetly, but at least you dream upward. The old women wield this geometry like a weapon. They wag their fingers, reminding everyone that flat sleepers draw the attention of beetles, maggots, and worse, the devil himself, who burrows into the earth to collect them. He takes the lazy first, they whisper, the ones who make themselves horizontal offerings. They never mention how crooked their own spines have become with age, how often they must lean against walls to rest. They prefer to scold others, and scolding feels holy too, in its way. You imagine the world as a vast diagram, each person a line, each house a shape. Upright bodies make a forest of vertical strokes, pointing like arrows to something greater. Flat ones break the pattern, drawing shadows across the page. Perhaps that's why funerals look so tidy. The dead are finally given permission to lie flat, to become horizontal lines in the earth's ledger. But you are not ready for that yet. You keep yourself tilted upward, crooked but climbing, unwilling to match the worms. In the stillness before dawn, when your neck wobbles and your eyes close, you remember the chalkboard and the words carved into your skull. Upright is heaven, flat is soil. Geometry doesn't lie. So you let your body sag, but never stretch, always fighting gravity, always clinging to the shape of the living, because you aren't ready to be a line in the ground, not tonight. The chamber pot is always too close. No matter where you place it when you crawl to bed, by morning it has crept back into striking distance, waiting like a trap. The pot is supposed to be a convenience, a mercy against stumbling into the freezing dark, but in truth, it's a lurking hazard. It sits there on the floor beside the pallet, sloshing faintly whenever someone shifts, a reminder that the night is long and bodies are weak. If you lie flat, you risk rolling. The pallet is cramped, bodies pressed together like stacked firewood, and shifting even an inch sends the whole row rippling. A cousin elbows you, you shove back, and suddenly you've slid farther than expected. One more roll, and you're there, cheek pressed against the clay rim, straw soaking in what no one wants to name. A single careless sprawl could end with you waking in a puddle of shame, and once that happens, there is no forgiveness. People forget many things, but they never forget who rolled into the chamber pot. Sitting upright prevents disaster. You anchor yourself against the wall, knees propped, body locked in awkward vigilance. Each time you nod forward, you jolt awake, reminded of the silent guardian at your side. The smell drifts through the room, sour and sharp, impossible to ignore. You tell yourself you'll grow used to it, but you never do. It hangs in the air like a curse, clinging to clothes and blankets, slipping into dreams. Children are the worst offenders. They stumble half asleep, knocking the pot over, sending liquid streaming across the floorboards. Chaos follows. Shouts, curses, someone trying to mop with a rag already damp from last week's wash. The goat refuses to sleep in the corner for days after, offended by the intrusion. Everyone blames everyone else, but suspicion always falls on whoever was lying flattest. Upright sleepers don't roll into disaster, so if you were stretched out, you're guilty, even if you swear otherwise. The pot itself feels alive at times, as though it waits for weakness. Its placement never seems deliberate. Sometimes it edges closer to the palate, sometimes it shifts to the center of the floor, daring someone to stumble. You begin to suspect it isn't just pottery, but a vessel with a will, carrying not just waste but malice. Perhaps demons don't climb down throats at night. They creep up from chamber pots instead, to guard against it. Families invent strategies. Some place a shoe between themselves and the pot, as if leather could protect against humiliation. Others stack firewood as a barrier, though that only ensures splinters in bare feet. A few insist on moving it across the room, but then someone inevitably trips in the dark and pays a worse price. In the end, the only true defense is posture. Sitting up, stiff and vigilant, means you won't wake sprawled in disgrace. You picture nobles again, those who have servants to carry their filth far from the bedchamber, who never wake fearing a roll to the left could ruin them. But even nobles aren't safe from accidents, you remind yourself, only from being seen. A peasant has no such luxury. Every mistake becomes gossip. If you wake with the pot tipped, the whole village will know by noon, and by supper they'll be laughing at your expense, exaggerating details until you drowned in it. So you stay upright, eyes burning, ears pricked for the faintest slosh. You guard your space like a soldier on night watch, knowing the enemy waits not outside but beside you, disguised as convenience. The chamber pot is too close, always too close, and sitting upright is the only thing between you and disgrace. The fireplace never sleeps. Even when the flames sink into embers, they smolder with a red glow, breathing out waves of heat and little sighs of smoke. The hearth is meant to keep you alive, but it's also a predator, waiting for someone careless enough to wander too close. You know this because every winter, someone in the village wakes up missing half their hair or with a tunic singed into lace. The lesson spreads quickly. If you lie flat and roll the wrong way, the fire will not forgive you. The danger is obvious during the day. Sparks leap out when wood pops, landing on the floor like tiny stars with malicious intent. People stomp them out before they catch the rush mats, muttering about devils hiding in the logs. At night, though, no one is stomping anything. You're asleep, vulnerable, and the fire is free to spit at you as it pleases. If you're stretched on your back, there's nothing to stop a wandering ember from kissing your blanket and setting you alight before you even stir. You've seen it happen once. Old Tomas fell asleep too close after too much ale, head practically resting on the hearthstone. When they found him, his beard had vanished, his eyebrows gone, his face blistered like boiled milk. He survived, though he smelled of smoke for months and claimed the saints had warned him in a dream. Everyone else whispered that lying flat was the true mistake, as if his posture had tempted the fire into vengeance. Upright would have saved him. Upright, they said, keeps you alert, keeps you from tumbling face first into the coals. The pallet in your house lies only a few feet away from the hearth. Enough distance if you stay disciplined, but far too close if you stretch out. One bad roll, and you'll be roasting like a pig at midsummer. That thought keeps you stiff-backed, even when your body begs to collapse. Each creak of the fire sounds like a warning, each hiss like the voice of some spirit daring you to test your luck. The heat touches your skin and makes sweat bead on your neck, but you don't move away. Moving away means more cold, more drafts, more rats. So you sit, trapped between shivering and scorching, telling yourself this is the better choice. Children are constantly reminded of the fire's appetite. Parents warn them with stories of witches hiding in the flames, ready to drag flat sleepers into the hearth. Sit tall or you'll waken the ashes, they say, and the children giggle until they hear wood snap and imagine claws reaching out. You remember believing those tales yourself, picturing the fire as a mouth waiting to swallow anyone foolish enough to sprawl. Part of you still does. The goat doesn't help matters. It always wanders near the fire, chewing calmly, unbothered by sparks or smoke. Once it even lay down right beside the hearth, belly nearly touching the stone, and everyone panicked, certain it would burst into flames. But it didn't. It simply stretched, yawned, and rolled its eyes at the humans quaking in their straw. The goat may trust the fire, but you do not. Animals may be immune to curses, but people are not so lucky. So you keep upright, the wall hard against your back, your eyes half open, watching the glow. Sleep comes in fragments, broken by the crackle of logs or the sudden hiss of sap exploding. Your dreams are filled with smoke, with burning roofs, with the smell of scorched hair. You wake more tired than you were before, but alive, and alive is what matters. Because in this room, lying flat is never just rest. It's an invitation to smoke, to sparks, to a fire that waits hungrily for someone careless enough to sprawl within its reach. Sitting up is not comfort. It is defense. The only shield you have against waking flambéed. The insects are always waiting. You can feel them before you see them, though you never truly see them all. Fleas leap from the straw like tiny acrobats, springing onto your ankles, your wrists, your neck. Bedbugs creep from cracks in the wood, slow and patient, waiting for the moment you go still. Lice crawl invisibly until suddenly your scalp is alive, an itch that spreads faster than fire. You swear the creatures hold councils in the dark, planning which part of you to feast on next. Everyone jokes that the fleas throw parties in the straw, and it's not far from the truth. Lying flat makes you their dance floor, your skin the banquet table, your blood the ale. They swarm in waves, tiny feet scuttling, jaws pricking, the kind of itch that drives you mad if you give it a second's thought. Upright at least keeps you above the thickest of them, out of reach of their crawling congress. Sitting means fewer bites, or at least the illusion of fewer. And illusions are sometimes enough to survive. You remember nights lying down as a child, before the warnings stuck. The itch began within moments. First your ankles, then your calves, then your belly. Scratch one place, and 3 others flared to life. By dawn, the straw looked like it had moved on its own, restless from the colonies beneath. Your grandmother shook her head and said, "That's what you get for sprawling. The bugs love a feast laid out flat." She wasn't wrong. There's no escaping them entirely. Even upright, they find their way. Fleas leap higher than seems possible, tiny demons with springs in their legs. Lice cling stubbornly to hair no matter how often it's combed with vinegar-soaked teeth. Bedbugs emerge like phantoms, leaving their marks in tidy red lines across your arms. You tell yourself the posture helps, and maybe it does, but the truth is they're always there, no matter how stiffly you sit. The best you can do is avoid offering yourself as a perfect buffet. The old women claim insects are moral tests. Lie down flat, they warn, and you'll itch because you've chosen sin. But the truth is less mystical and more cruel. Insects love warm bodies, and your body is the warmest thing in a cold room. Still, superstition grows because it feels better to imagine punishment than randomness. Better to think you can outwit bugs with posture than admit you're never safe. Sometimes the itching becomes a kind of music in the dark. All around you, people shift and scratch, a chorus of restless limbs and muffled groans. The goat stomps a hoof in irritation, the baby whimpers, someone mutters a curse at nothing in particular. No one sleeps deeply. Sleep is a series of bargains, 10 minutes of drifting in exchange for one fresh bite, a quarter hour of quiet before the next itch drives you back into wakefulness. Lying flat would only worsen it. You've heard tales of men waking covered head to toe in welts, looking like they'd wrestled nettles all night. The bugs love a surface stretched wide, and lying down is like unfurling a banquet cloth. You don't want to be that cloth. You don't want to be remembered as the one who looked chewed to ribbons come morning. So you stay upright, cramped and sore, clinging to the idea that elevation keeps you safe. And maybe it does, or maybe it doesn't. But as long as you're sitting, you can pretend you've outsmarted the bugs, that you've risen above their feast. The itch is still there, but it feels less damning when you're not sprawled like a platter on the straw. You keep your chin tucked, your knees drawn in, scratching when you must, enduring when you can. Because in this house, the floor belongs to the insects, and survival means staying just high enough above their party to call it your own. A house of 12 never sleeps quietly. Even if the fire burns low and the goats outside stop bleating, there is always someone moving, some small body climbing, some cousin deciding your lap is the perfect place to collapse. You sit upright because lying flat would make you a mattress, and mattresses are claimed without mercy. At least when you're propped against the wall, knees tucked, elbows sharp, you can defend your patch of straw from invasion. The younger ones are the worst. They wake in the night confused, eyes still half dreaming, and wander toward the nearest body. If you're stretched out, you're instantly annexed, tiny feet pressing into your stomach, small heads burrowing into your ribs. One child is tolerable, but then another follows, and soon you're buried under a heap of siblings and cousins, each wriggling for the warmest spot. It's not sleep, it's suffocation disguised as affection. Sitting upright at least makes you less appealing. Children rarely want to climb a wall, but they try anyway. You've woken more than once with a toddler clambering up your knees, using your shoulder as a foothold, determined to reach some imagined summit. Another cousin treats your lap as a throne, smacking you awake when your head tips forward. And when one decides to settle, the others follow, until you're nothing but scaffolding for a nest of restless limbs. You push them off, whisper curses, but they always return, magnetized by your body heat. Upright, you can shove them gently aside. Flat, you drown in them. The goat doesn't help. It weaves through the chaos, sniffing at blankets, nudging bodies aside to stake its own claim. Once, you woke with it standing over you, hooves planted on either side of your chest as though you were just another plank of wood. You learned then that posture is protection. Sitting tall makes you unappealing to goats and children alike, a fortress too awkward to scale. The noise is constant. Snuffling, coughing, the sharp smack of one child elbowing another in their sleep. Someone always kicks, someone always mutters, and the air fills with sighs of frustration. In a house this crowded, privacy is a myth. You live in shared space, shared breath, shared straw. Survival means guarding what little boundary you can carve out with your own body. Upright sleeping becomes not just habit, but strategy, the one way to maintain a sliver of self in the tide of family flesh. You hear stories of nobles who tuck children away in separate rooms, who let them sleep in cradles or beds of their own. You imagine silence, space, air unclouded by the sound of 12 lungs huffing in unison. But the thought feels strange, too. Wouldn't silence be louder than all this noise? Wouldn't emptiness feel heavier than a child's foot in your ribs? You can't decide if it would be peace or punishment, so you endure the climbing, the jostling, the endless struggle for space. You wedge yourself against the wall, blanket drawn tight, chin to chest, warding off every attempt to claim your body as extra bedding. Your back aches, your legs cramp, but you stay seated, because sitting is survival. Sitting means breath. Sitting means you're not crushed under the weight of a dozen dreams. In a house of 12, no one sleeps well, but upright, at least, you sleep on your own terms. Chickens do not respect walls. They flap and scratch their way through gaps in the door, or squeeze between loose boards as if the house is just another oversized coop. At night, when the room is dim and smoky, you hear them before you see them. the soft patter of claws on wood, the faint cluck of a bird confused about why the sun isn't up. You try to ignore it, but soon they're strutting boldly across the floor, pecking at crumbs, muttering like old men in debate. If you're lying flat, you're in their path. Chickens wander without care, stepping onto blankets, across ankles, sometimes straight onto faces if they think you might be hiding grain in your breath. More than once, someone has woken with a hen perched proudly on their chest, talons pricking through the fabric, head tilted with judgment. The room erupts in laughter, but the victim swears for days, claw marks glowing red like fresh penance. Sitting upright, however, saves you. Chickens rarely climb walls. They prefer flat surfaces, easy ground, the bodies stretched foolishly across straw. Upright means you become an obstacle rather than a perch. They aim for the chamber pot too, dipping their beaks into forbidden places, sending the whole household into chaos. One flaps, another follows, and suddenly feathers and filth are everywhere. Children shriek. The goat bleats. Someone swats with a broom, and in the middle of it all, you thank yourself for staying seated. Flat sleepers roll into the fray, but upright you can at least swing an arm and keep your dignity intact. It isn't just the chickens either. Sometimes it's ducks. Once even a goose that decided the hearth belonged to him. But chickens are the regular intruders, the nightly visitors that remind you the house is never truly yours. Their feathers drift into the straw, their smell mingles with smoke, and their eyes glint in the half-dark with eerie calm. You start to think they're more than birds, that they carry secrets in their clucks, some judgment passed down from the dawn itself. The elders don't mind them. A blessing, they say, to have creatures so eager to share our warmth. You don't see it that way. Blessings don't leave scratches on your cheeks or peck at your ears. Blessings don't strut across your blankets at the precise moment you've nearly found rest. But no one listens when you argue. They only laugh, shake their heads, and tell you to sit upright like everyone else to protect yourself against midnight talons. And so you do. You press your back to the wall, knees up, blanket pulled tight, listening to the scratching and fluttering as the chickens claim the floorboards. You imagine them as soldiers patrolling, pecking for intruders, though in truth they're only searching for crumbs. Still, posture matters. Upright, you remain outside their world, untouchable, flat. You'd be part of the ground they rule, and they'd walk across you without hesitation. By morning, they're gone, slipping back into the yard as if nothing happened, leaving only feathers and claw marks as proof. The room stirs, people yawn, the goat coughs, and no one seems particularly surprised. Night belongs to the chickens as much as it belongs to you. The only defense is vigilance, the shield of posture, the simple act of keeping your body a little higher than theirs, because once you lie flat, you're nothing but another surface for them to claim. The ale flows every evening, thick and frothy, poured into wooden mugs that taste faintly of mold. No one drinks moderately. Moderation is a word for monks, not peasants with aching backs and endless chores. By nightfall, the whole house is heavy with the smell of yeast and sour breath. Everyone is drunk. Your cousins, your uncles, even your ward aunt who swears she only had one sip, but now sings tunelessly into the goat's ear. Drunkenness is the only way to make the straw pallet feel like a bed, instead of a sack of sticks, but it carries its own dangers. If you lie flat after ale, disaster is certain. The belly, stuffed with bread and beer, churns like a storm-tossed sea. Gravity pulls in all directions at once, and the stew of grain and hops has only one escape. You roll to your back, mouth open, and suddenly, the night becomes a contest between choking and drowning in your own excess. Sitting upright, at least, lets the body stumble through the ordeal with dignity, or something close to it. Leaning forward, you might even have a chance to make it to the chamber pot. Flat, you're just another cautionary tale. Everyone remembers the last fool who risked it. A young man, cousin to someone important, drank too much at the midsummer feast. He sprawled across the pallet, arms wide, snoring like thunder. By morning he was gone, not to demons or hags, but to his own supper rising at the wrong time. The priest spoke gravely, calling it a lesson from heaven about the sin of gluttony, but everyone else just muttered, "Don't lie flat after ale." The story repeats every winter, each retelling a little more embellished, until you half believe Death himself waits by the hearth to tip mugs into mouths just to prove the point. The sound of sleep in a drunken house is never gentle. Snores mix with hiccups, groans with muttered arguments carried over from the tavern. Someone always sings halfway through the night, forgetting the words, humming until they collapse back into silence. Then comes the unmistakable gag, the cough that makes everyone jolt awake. Upright, you're alert enough to dodge the splash zone or shove a cousin toward the pot. Lying flat, you'd just be in the line of fire, a victim of someone else's stomach. Children giggle about it in daylight, pretending to stumble and fall, clutching their bellies, collapsing dramatically. But beneath the laughter there's fear, because they've seen the stains on the straw, the smell that lingers after. They've heard adults mutter prayers at dawn, thankful they woke upright instead of not at all. Even the goat, cleverer than it looks, avoids the pallets on drinking nights, curling up by the door where the air is fresher. Animals know better than humans sometimes, so you sit. You keep your back to the wall, legs folded, head bobbing, because ale may make your body heavy, but instinct makes your spine stubborn. Each time you drift, your stomach reminds you with a sour churn that you are not safe to lie down. You grip the edge of the blanket, hold yourself in place, and wait for morning. The room reeks of yeast and smoke, but it is still better than the alternative. You dream of nobles again, those who drink wine from glass goblets and fall onto feather mattresses without fear. But even nobles must wake in their own mess sometimes. The difference is that they have servants to clean it, while you have only cousins who will mock you until your last day. Better to sit, better to ache, better to survive the ale with nothing worse than a stiff neck. In this house, on these nights, posture isn't just superstition. It's survival against yourself, against the stew of grain and hops sloshing inside your gut. Lying flat after ale isn't rest. It's surrender to disaster. Bread is not soft here. Bread is a weapon. A loaf of rye could patch a wall, sink in a river without crumbling, or knock out a man if you threw it hard enough. You chew for so long that your jaw aches, the crust grinding your teeth down to stubs, the crumb dense enough to sit heavy in your gut like a stone. It is food, yes, but it is also ballast. Once swallowed, it does not move quickly. It lingers, stubborn as debt, reminding you of its presence with every breath. If you lie flat after eating, the bread does not forgive you. It presses upward, against your ribs, climbing your throat like it wants to return to daylight. The weight sits so solidly that breathing becomes a chore, your chest heaving as though you've swallowed a millstone. Upright posture keeps it moving, or at least lets gravity play on your side, coaxing the lump of rye downward instead of letting it rebel. Sitting up means survival. Lying down means surrender to indigestion's cruel hand. You've seen it in others. Your cousin once lay back too soon after supper, groaning and clutching his belly, while the rest of you laughed nervously, trying not to imagine your own fates. He swore he felt the bread crawling back into his throat, brick by brick. The old women clucked and shook their heads. That's what happens when you sprawl like a sinner. Bread punishes the lazy. And that was that. No sympathy, no remedies. Just the confirmation that posture is the difference between nourishment and torment. Bread here isn't just heavy, it's suspicious. The loaves are baked so dark they look more like blocks of soil than food. Cut them open, and you find a crumb so tight it resists knives. The slice is cracking instead of bending. You chew until your jaw threatens mutiny, swallow with effort, and feel the lump descend like cargo being lowered into your stomach. You drink ale to help, but ale only joins the conspiracy, bubbling and frothing against the bread's stubborn weight. Together they make your belly a battlefield. Children sometimes play at testing the bread's strength. They throw pieces at walls to see if they stick, or bang them against the table to mimic a drum. Once, one boy tied a loaf to a string and swung it like a weapon until it split open a jug. Adults scolded, but no one really argued with the demonstration. Bread is not just food. It's material, foundation, bludgeon. Eating it is both necessity and trial. So you learn the posture that keeps you safe. You sit with your knees bent, back propped, chin low, letting your body act like a funnel to keep the bread moving in the right direction. You breathe shallowly to avoid stirring it into revolt. You remind yourself that nobles eat softer loaves, white and airy, bread that crumbles easily and melts on the tongue. You will never know that luxury. You have your dark bricks, and you must learn to respect them. The elders say the bread builds strength. Rye makes bones like iron, they insist, but only if you sit proper after eating. To them, bread is more than sustenance. It's discipline. You don't complain, because complaining doesn't lighten the load in your belly. You only shift, groan softly, and thank yourself for staying upright, because you've seen what happens otherwise, and you don't want to be remembered as the one who let bread defeat him. So you sit crooked, arms around your knees, fighting sleep as the loaf settles slowly inside. The weight is still there, immovable, but at least it stays where it belongs. Upright, you can survive it. Flat, you'd be just another cautionary tale, whispered about at the well. The fool who lost a battle to bread. Cheese is not just food. It is prophecy disguised as dairy. You eat it because it's offered. Thick wedges cut from wheels that smell faintly of hay and something sharper, something almost alive. At first, the taste is harmless, salty, sour, chewy. But when night falls, the cheese begins to work its tricks. No one admits it aloud, but everyone knows. Cheese means dreams, and dreams mean trouble. The old men swear the curds trap spirits during churning, that every wheel carries whispers from whatever lingered near the cow's udder. The old women insist cheese is heavier than bread in ways beyond the stomach, that it anchors visions in your head. And when you close your eyes, upright or not, the proof arrives. Dreams sprout quickly, vivid and strange, sharper than anything you'd have after plain rye. One bite too much, and you'll wake certain you saw a demon grin at you through the rafters. You try to believe the priest when he calls dreams warnings from God, but if God sends visions of cows speaking Latin or chickens sprouting human hands, his messages are less clear than you'd like. Most of the time, the cheese brings nightmares, shadows dragging across the walls, faceless shapes whispering in your ear, the sensation of falling into an endless pit of smoke. Upright, you hope to keep them at bay. Upright, maybe your posture convinces the spirits you're awake. Guarded, not a body lying flat and open for invasion. Children laugh about it at first, daring each other to eat extra cheese before bed, but by morning their faces are pale, their eyes wide, and they cling to their mothers with new caution. They've seen things. They've felt the press of something heavy on their chests, the scratch of invisible claws, the heat of breath not their own. They don't laugh for long. After a few nights of testing fate, they sit up like everyone else, clutching blankets, muttering prayers between shallow snores. You remember the last feast, when too much cheese was passed around. The whole house groaned with restless sleep, bodies twitching, voices mumbling in unison, as if rehearsing some terrible chorus. At one point, your uncle screamed so loudly the goat bolted through the door and refused to return until dawn. When morning came, he insisted he'd been pulled under the floor by black hands and only escaped because he sat upright at the last moment. Everyone nodded. No one doubted him. The worst part is how real it feels. Dreams born of cheese cling long after waking. You see faces in the fire's smoke, hear voices in the creak of rafters, catch movement in the corner of your eye when there's nothing there. You wonder if the visions stop when you open your eyes, or if they're still happening, unseen, waiting for you to drift again. Upright sleeping becomes more than habit. It's defense, the only way to keep the sliver of distance between yourself and the dreams pressing in. You tell yourself it's only food, only curds and whey pressed together. But deep down, you believe what the village whispers. Cheese carries visions, and visions aren't harmless. You fold your knees, rest your head against the wall, keep your body lifted, upright. You pray the demons stay in the shadows of your mind instead of sitting on your chest. Upright, you hope God sees your effort and spares you from worse, because in this place, cheese does not just fill your stomach. It fills your night with things you'd rather not see, and sitting up is the only way to keep them at a distance. Pea stew is betrayal in a bowl. It smells earthy and innocent while simmering, the steam curling up as though promising warmth and comfort. But once it's in your stomach, the truth unfolds. Peas multiply inside you. They swell, they bloat, they stage a rebellion. You spooned them down because you were hungry, because bread wasn't enough, and ale only made you hungrier. But now you feel them lodged beneath your ribs like smug little stones. Everyone knows the curse of peas. They don't stay quiet. They rise in waves, bringing burps that taste faintly of ash and earth, each one louder than the last, like a series of trumpets announcing your poor choices. Upright, you can burp with some dignity, pat your chest, pretend it's nothing. Lying flat, though, that's a battlefield you always lose. The peas churn and push upward, climbing like they're trying to escape, and you're forced awake by the sour echo of your supper. The old men joke that peas were made for punishment, not nourishment. They say monks live on them so they're always reminded of sin, every burp a confession they never meant to make. Old women shake their heads and insist peas strengthen the blood, though none of them can explain why you feel weaker each time you eat them. Still, they keep ladling the stew into bowls, and you keep swallowing because hunger leaves little room for pride. You remember the last feast day when the pot was extra thick. Everyone ate greedily, slurping in rhythm, the air so heavy with steam you could barely see across the table. Hours later, the palate was alive with groans. Men clutched their bellies, women fanned themselves desperately, children whimpered in confusion. Upright, you survived with only a sour mouth and a stiff back. Flat sleepers, though, paid the price. One cousin spent half the night choking on burps he couldn't contain, flailing in his blankets, while others shoved him into a sitting position before the stew finished him. No one laughed that morning. Peas have a way of haunting even after they're gone. The smell lingers in your clothes, clings to your hair, makes every breath taste faintly of yesterday's supper. You sit in the dark, knees drawn in, stomach gurgling like a swamp, and you promise yourself you'll eat fewer next time. But you never do. The pot is always full, and your hands are always too quick to reach for it, forgetting the misery that waits hours later. Children whisper that peas cause dreams too, though different from cheese. Not demons or hags, but endless fields where you wander forever, picking peas that never fill a basket. You've had that dream once, and you woke sweating, swearing you could still taste the dirt under your tongue. Upright sleeping doesn't stop those visions, but it keeps you from drowning in the stew's revenge. You wonder if nobles eat peas. Maybe they have softer versions, peeled or boiled in butter, transformed into something gentle. Yours are boiled until they collapse into mush, yet somehow they remain harder inside your stomach than stones. You imagine nobles lying flat without consequence, their peas polite enough to stay where they're put. You almost hate them for it, but you don't live in that world. You live here, where supper is stew, where peas follow you into the night, and where posture decides whether you'll make it to morning. So you sit crooked, shifting with every bubble of your belly, whispering prayers you don't quite believe. Upright, you endure. Flat, you'd be nothing more than another sorry tale of a fool who underestimated the power of peas. Night in a crowded bed is not silent. The straw shifts, the goat sighs, Children mutter through their dreams, and then comes the sound no one speaks of in daylight. It starts with a low rumble, muffled beneath the blanket, a tremor that rolls across the bodies pressed together. Someone stirs, another coughs, but everyone knows what it is. The night farts arrive, uninvited yet inevitable, filling the palate like smoke in a chamber. When 5 people share one blanket, air is already scarce. The heavy wool traps breath, sweat, every cough and whisper, until it feels less like warmth and more like suffocation. Add digestion to the mix. Peas, bread, cheese, ale, and the blanket becomes its own atmosphere, thick and relentless. Lying flat makes you part of it, helpless beneath the shared cloud. But sitting upright lets you lift your head above the fog, gasping at what little clean air drifts near the rafters. Posture becomes politeness, self-defense, survival. No one admits responsibility. Each person pretends to sleep, eyes squeezed shut, faces carefully blank, but you can feel the silent accusations hanging in the dark. The goat shifts its hooves angrily, as though to remind everyone that even animals have limits. A cousin smirks, certain you're guilty. You scowl back, certain it was him. The baby whimpers, proving innocence in the only way possible, and the argument dies unspoken. Still, the smell lingers, and you thank yourself for sitting upright, away from the densest layer of air. It isn't only the odor, it's the heat. The blanket traps warmth until it becomes unbearable, the air growing thick enough to chew. You remember one winter night when no one sat upright, when everyone huddled flat for warmth, and by dawn the pallet stank so badly the entire household dragged the bedding outside, gagging as they shook it clean. The neighbors laughed, but they knew it could just as easily have been them. Since then, everyone insists on at least one person staying seated, a lookout against invisible dangers. The old women say it's sin escaping the body, a reminder that indulgence always leaves traces. They wag their fingers, insisting that gluttony and sloth invite foul humors. You don't argue. You simply stay upright, breathing through your sleeve, waiting for the air to thin. Some lessons don't need sermons. They arrive in the night, undeniable and unforgettable. Sometimes you wonder if nobles deal with the same problem. Do their feather beds stink by dawn? Or do their softer meals and separate chambers spare them this nightly humiliation? You imagine them perfumed and pristine, unbothered by the earthy chorus that dominates your palate. The thought makes you bitter, but it also makes you laugh, because in your world, no one escapes it. Not the pious, not the children, not even the goat. So, you sit against the wall, head tipped forward, knees tucked tight, and let your body ache in exchange for clean air. You tell yourself it's courtesy, that by sitting, you save the others a little space beneath the blanket. But it's more than that. It's survival. The art of keeping your head above the fumes, of ensuring you wake at dawn without drowning in the night's evidence. The room quiets, the rumbling subsides, and eventually, sleep comes in thin slices, upright, uncomfortable, but bearable. Because lying flat would mean sharing in everything that lingers under the blanket, and some things are better left beneath you. A noble bed is not a bed so much as a performance stage. 4 carved posts rise like pillars, draped in fabric meant to remind you of heaven itself, though usually it just smells of damp velvet and candle smoke. A canopy hovers above, embroidered with stars, saints, or family crests. No one outside the manor cares about. The pillows are stuffed with feathers instead of straw, plump and soft, though you've heard rumors of servants plucking the birds alive just to keep the nobles from having to rest their heads on anything less than perfect fluff. The mattress is not a box of wood but a stack of layers. Ropes, cushions, wool, more feathers. An entire tower of softness designed to separate noble skin from the hardness of earth. And yet, for all the grandeur, the posture is the same. Upright, shoulders squared, heads tilted just so, nobles sleep like statues. They claim it's for health, for purity, for divine alignment, but everyone knows it's mostly for display. A noble bed is not meant to be slept in, it's meant to be seen. Upright posture shows discipline, control, a body so refined it won't surrender even to exhaustion. You picture them practicing in daylight, rehearsing the tilt of their heads, the angle of their arms, so that by night they still look elegant in case anyone peeks in. Servants whisper that nobles never truly lie flat, because flatness is too common, too earthly. Flat is for peasants and corpses. Upright is for saints, for portraits, for tales told in great halls about how disciplined Lord so-and-so was, even in his rest. Upright posture becomes another kind of weapon, proof of superiority, a reminder that while peasants huddle in straw to escape fleas, nobles hold their chins high above the air, even while snoring. You imagine what it must feel like, the feathers molding around your body, the velvet curtains blocking drafts, the silence of a chamber meant for one family alone. No goats bleating, no cousins climbing, no chamber pots within rolling distance. Just quiet, heavy with wealth. And yet even there, they sit half upright, propped by cushions embroidered with golden thread, hands folded neatly across their laps. They don't fear demons, in the throat, or choking on peas. They fear appearing less noble if anyone sees them sprawled like commoners. Once you overheard a story about a countess who was caught sleeping flat. A servant crept in to stoke the fire and found her stretched out, mouth wide open, drooling. The servant didn't survive long after spreading the tale. The countess, however, became a cautionary whisper. Never let posture slip, for posture is honor. Since then, no noble dares rest without arranging themselves like icons in stained glass, upright, unyielding, pious even in slumber. You wonder if it's as uncomfortable as it looks. Do their necks ache like yours? Do their legs go numb beneath the layers of fabric? Or does the softness of feathers make it bearable, the way velvet pillows cradle their heads while they pretend not to notice the strain? Perhaps their wealth protects them from discomfort, turning upright posture into a privilege rather than a punishment. But you suspect not. You suspect pain still finds them, only they call it virtue instead. Nobles like to boast about their discipline. They claim their upright posture keeps them closer to God, that it separates them from the dirt dwellers who snore flat on the ground. They commission paintings of themselves half reclined, saints leaning gracefully into eternity, and expect peasants to look on in awe. You look instead with suspicion. You know posture is survival, not vanity. You know it keeps demons out and peas down, but they don't care about demons or peas. They care about looking holy in their silks. So while you sit hunched in your straw box, scratching fleas and swatting chickens, you imagine them upright in their velvet prisons, trapped by the weight of their own appearances. The truth is, posture binds you both, though for different reasons. For you, it's necessity. For them, it's pride. But in the end, the result is the same. Everyone sits, upright in the dark, waiting for morning, pretending there's choice in it. The servant's corner is not a place so much as an afterthought. A sliver of wall near the door, shadowed by a chest no one uses, smelling faintly of smoke and boots. It's where you end up when the real beds, even the straw pallets, have already been claimed by people with names that matter. You slide down the wall slowly, careful not to draw notice, and fold yourself into the narrow space like a bundle of discarded cloth. Half sitting, half slumping, you press your back to the cold wood and pretend it's intentional. If anyone asks, you say you prefer it this way. Upright posture is good for the lungs, you explain. Helps with breathing, keeps demons from sitting on your chest. They nod, half believing, half dismissing, and you pray no one notices the truth. You didn't choose this posture out of wisdom. You chose it because there was nowhere else to go. Sitting up is necessity disguised as virtue. The corner has its advantages. From here you can hear the house breathe, the snoring nobles on their feather beds, the shuffling servants wedged together on straw, the goat muttering in its sleep. You hear every cough, every creak, every whispered prayer. It makes you part of things without belonging, both present and apart. And though the wall digs into your spine and your knees ache from being pulled too close to your chest, there is a strange comfort in knowing no one will roll onto you here. You're safe from elbows, from wandering children, from the nightly shuffle of too many bodies sharing too little space. Still, the wall is unforgiving. The wood presses into your shoulder blades until they burn, and your head lolls sideways until your neck stiffens. Sleep comes in short bursts, shallow and fragile, easily broken by a draft or a slammed door. You wake often, disoriented, unsure whether minutes or hours have passed. Yet you always wake upright, your back braced, your chest lifted, because the wall holds you there like an unwilling partner. You tell to yourself it's holy. It feels more like survival. Once in a while, you imagine yourself discovered. A noble wanders by, sees you propped against the wall, and praises your discipline. Look how the servant sits, even in sleep, a model of humility and strength. They'll say it with admiration, never knowing it's because your only other option was the floor, where the rats patrol freely. They'll turn your discomfort into a lesson, your corner into a parable, and you'll bow your head as though you intended it all along. Sometimes the other servants mock you, too holy to lie flat. They whisper, smirking as they sprawl on straw. But you notice how quickly they sit up when the air grows thick with smoke, or when someone groans from indigestion. They laugh at you, but they copy you, because they've learned the same truth. Upright is safer, whether in the noble's chamber or in the servant's corner. You dream differently here, not the vivid nightmares of cheese or the choking shadows of night hags, but smaller, humbler visions. Dreams of walking across fields, of carrying water without spilling, of eating bread that doesn't sit like a stone in your gut. Perhaps it's because the wall props you like a scarecrow, neither lying down nor fully standing, caught between exhaustion and alertness. You never dream of luxury, never of velvet beds or feather pillows. Those belong to others. Your dreams are practical, thin as the straw swept from the floor. In the end, you convince yourself the corner is a choice. Better posture, better air, fewer interruptions. You repeat it until you believe it. Because in truth, you have no other option. You're a servant, and servants don't sprawl across velvet or even across straw when the house is crowded. Servants fold themselves small, press against walls, and turn necessity into virtue. And so you sit, night after night, back against the wood, knees to your chest, eyes heavy, half sitting, half slumping, always pretending it's intentional. Because in this house, posture is the only dignity you can afford. The dormitory smells of stone, sweat, and cabbage soup long digested. Rows of wooden benches line the hall, narrow enough that no one could ever lie flat even if they dared. The monks sit shoulder to shoulder, cowls drawn, bodies upright, hands folded loosely in their laps. From a distance, you'd think them statues, guardians of silence. But step closer, and you hear the truth. Snores thick as thunder, rattling through the vaulted ceiling until the saints in the frescoes seem to vibrate. It isn't just snoring, it's an orchestra. One monk wheezes high, another rumbles low, a third sputters like a bellows losing air. The sounds overlap until they form a strange kind of harmony, a holy drone that fills the stone chamber. Then, inevitably, the chorus breaks with a sharper note, a fart, echoing against the walls, magnified by the acoustics, until it rings out like a trumpet. No one stirs. No one laughs. It is simply part of the nightly liturgy, a prayer of the body made audible. You try not to join in, but you can't help yourself. Peas, bread, cheese, ale. Everything conspires against silence. Upright, the body holds longer, but not forever. When it happens, You hope it blends into the general symphony, indistinguishable from Brother Matthias's basso snores or Brother Peter's muttering prayers. You fold your hands tighter, close your eyes, and pretend you are beyond such things. But the stone walls have no mercy. Every sound becomes communal. The monks claim this posture is discipline. They say sleeping upright keeps them vigilant, ready for prayer at any hour. If the bell rings, they rise without fumbling, already half awake. But you suspect the real reason is less holy. Sitting means less chance of rolling into one another, less chance of being smothered in wool robes or drowning in the stew of shared digestion. Sitting is survival, dressed as sanctity, and it works most of the time. Still, the discipline has its theater. Every evening, the abbot inspects the rows, ensuring spines are straight, heads bowed just enough to look reverent. Those who slump are nudged awake, reminded that sloth invites the devil. You watch men fight sleep with clenched jaws, their bodies trembling from the effort of remaining upright. Eventually, sleep wins anyway, but the posture remains, enforced by habit and the weight of expectation. Dreams here are strange. You drift in fragments, always half listening to the snores around you, the scrape of sandals in the corridor, the drip of water somewhere deep in the stone. You dream of bells tolling endlessly, of candles burning without smoke, of bread that never hardens. The farts fold into the dreams too, transformed into thunder or distant drums, proof that even visions cannot escape the body's insistence. Upright, you never fall too deeply. Upright, the dream and the waking world blur until both feel equally unreal. You wonder sometimes if holiness is really measured in posture. Perhaps God cares little whether you sit or lie, whether your back is straight or bent. But here, in the dormitory, posture is everything. It is discipline, identity, proof of devotion. To sleep flat would be scandal. To snore sprawled would be heresy. So everyone remains in line, rows of upright silhouettes, drifting in and out of dreams, producing a nightly hymn of snores and trumpets. The dawn bell always comes too soon. The monks stir, rubbing their eyes, stretching stiff arms, coughing into sleeves. The holy choir dissolves into shuffling feet and muttered greetings. The smell lingers, woven into stone and straw, but no one acknowledges it. Instead, they file into the chapel, spines straight, eyes weary, chanting words that rise above the memory of the night. And you, stiff-backed and bleary, follow along, telling yourself the posture made you holy, even if it only made you ache. In the monk's dormitory, sitting upright is less about God than about survival. But no one will admit that. They call it discipline, and perhaps, by morning, you almost believe it too. A king never sleeps easily. His bed is a fortress disguised as velvet, its posts carved with lions, saints, or angels with swords, as if decoration might frighten danger away. The mattress is stacked high with feathers, so soft it swallows whoever dares lie on it. But kings do not lie. They sit, upright, heavy crown removed but posture intact, their spines stiff against carved oak, hands resting on blankets embroidered with gold thread. The room is guarded, the doors locked, but still they sit half waking, half dreaming, unwilling to stretch out like prey on display. Everyone knows why. Flat bodies look too much like corpses, too much like opportunity. An assassin slipping through shadow could mistake slumber for surrender, a blade into the ribs before the sleeper ever stirs. Upright, though, the king is not so easily taken. Even in dreams, he looks alert, ready to command, ready to cry for steel and light. It's theater as much as safety, posture reminding the world that even unconscious, the crown does not bow. The guards whisper about it on long nights. They joke that the king never truly sleeps, that he's half spirit, half stone, too proud to let his body slump like theirs. Yet they've seen his head dip, his mouth fall open, the briefest betrayals of exhaustion. Still, the posture holds, propped by cushions, arranged by servants who know appearance matters more than comfort. Kings can't afford to be seen in weakness, even by the men sworn to protect them. You imagine the weight of it, not just the crown, but the suspicion, the constant knowledge that daggers linger in every shadow. Nobles conspire, cousins plot, priests mutter of divine punishment. Sleep is surrender, and surrender is death. Better to stay upright, spine aching, neck stiff, than to risk waking to a knife's whisper. So the king sits, and the court calls it discipline, wisdom, foresight. They never call it fear. Fear is for peasants. Posture is for kings. But posture does not ease the mind. The king still dreams, strange visions half-seated in the dark, of arrows slipping through curtains, of poison in his goblet, of footsteps too quiet on the stone floor. He wakes often, starts at every creak, demands new guards every few hours. Servants replace his cushions, straighten his blankets, bow low and murmur prayers as though posture alone will hold back fate. The irony is that the throne teaches him to sleep this way long before the bed does. Days spent perched on carved wood, hearing disputes, passing judgment, never leaning too far lest someone call him lax. The throne is posture turned into duty, and by night the habit lingers. His chamber is only another hall, his bed another seat, his body another symbol. Upright is the only way he knows how to be. And yet, behind the velvet and gold, the ache must gnaw at him the same as it does you. His shoulders burn, his hips stiffen, his eyelids grow heavy. He is king, but also just a man, forced to pretend even in sleep. You almost pity him, imagining him seated in that lavish cage, listening to the quiet while the rest of the palace breathes freely. Almost, because in truth, his posture is not so different from yours. You sit in your straw bed to keep demons out of your throat. He sits in his feathered nest to keep daggers out of his ribs. Both of you ache. Both of you wake too often. Both of you convince yourselves it is choice when it is only necessity. Upright, you survive. Flat, you risk everything. And so the king dozes stiffly in his chamber, and you curl stiffly in yours, separated by walls, wealth, and crowns, but joined in posture, both waiting for morning, both pretending sleep is safe, both held upright by fear of what lies down below. Peasant logic is not complicated. You live with pigs, goats, chickens, rats, fleas, cousins, and sometimes the neighbor's wandering donkey. Everything wants your food. Everything. You spend all day pulling turnips from hard earth, scrubbing the dirt off, stacking them in the corner with pride, and then the moment you finally close your eyes, some snout pushes its way into the house. Lying flat means you'll wake to the sound of crunching, too late to save anything. Sitting upright means you're half ready, eyes cracking open at the faintest squeal, hands already reaching for the broom to chase the thief away. Everyone pretends it's superstition, but it's not. It's vigilance. You've seen what happens to people who sprawl like corpses. They wake to devastation, turnip greens scattered, pig tracks in the straw, nothing left but chewed roots and guilt. The family stares at them like they've committed treason. How could you let the pig take the winter's food? And what can you say? That you were comfortable? Comfort isn't an excuse when you're hungry. Comfort is luxury, and peasants don't have luxury. You know the pigs are clever. They nose doors open, push through gaps, root through walls. They are persistence in flesh, driven by hunger that mirrors your own. A pig doesn't care if you're sleeping. A pig only knows there's food in reach, and it will take it unless you stop it. Sitting upright is the only way to prove you're still master of your own house. Posture becomes weapon. Posture says, "Not tonight, pig." And it isn't just pigs. Wolves circle in winter. Foxes sneak in at night. Even dogs from down the lane wander hungry. But pigs are worst, because pigs are yours. You feed them, fatten them, dream of the day they'll be slaughtered. Yet every night they plot against you. It's betrayal made of bristles and squeals, and you can only defend yourself by staying half awake. Upright, your ears catch every rustle. Upright, your legs are ready to spring. Lying flat, you'd be defenseless, another fool robbed by his own animal. You think often of nobles, how they sleep with guards at their doors, food tucked away in storerooms with locks and keys. They never wake to the sound of tusks scraping against the table. Their fears are daggers, poisons, cousins with ambition. Yours are pigs with mud on their snouts and turnips between their teeth. And yet posture binds you both, each of you stiff-backed in the night, listening for the intruder. The elders say this is how it's always been. Farmers are not allowed to rest. The land demands too much. The animals ask too often. Hunger waits too close. To lie flat is to tempt ruin. To sit upright is to live responsibly, always braced for the next disaster. It becomes tradition, folded into bedtime like a prayer. Mothers shake children awake if they slump, scolding, "You'll miss the pig, and then we'll starve." Children learn early, posture before comfort, vigilance before rest. Of course, you don't always catch them. Sometimes the pigs win. Sometimes you wake to emptiness, the corner stripped, the floor smeared with mud. But at least when you sit upright, you know you tried. At least you can leap into action, swinging, shouting, chasing the beasts into the yard. Your body aches, your eyes burn, but your turnips remain. Upright sleeping saves more than posture. It saves winter. So you sit, folded against the wall, neck bent, arms crossed, listening to every scrape and grunt in the dark. Your dreams are shallow, broken by suspicion, but you accept it, because lying flat means waking to loss. Upright means readiness, and readiness is the only wealth a peasant can claim. Physicians are never short of warnings, and their favorite is always about vapors. You hear it in the square, in the tavern, even whispered at sickbeds, reclining traps, vapors, and vapors kill. No one quite explains what vapors are, but everyone nods as though they understand. They might be invisible demons, they might be bad air, they might be something that seeps out of your liver when it feels unappreciated. Whatever they are, doctors insist posture controls them. Upright, and your vapors rise and escape. Flat, and they pool in your chest until you suffocate. The physicians say this with great authority, stroking beards that smell faintly of garlic, waving hands stained from herbs and bloodletting. They carry bags filled with dried roots, jars of strange powders, and knives they insist are for healing, but look better suited to slaughtering goats. Their words come heavy with Latin no one understands, but the conclusion is always clear. Sit up, or you'll die. The peasants listen, wide-eyed, clutching their bellies as though vapors are already boiling inside them. Even nobles obey, propped by pillows and servants, nodding along while trying not to grimace at the discomfort. You don't question it too hard, because doctors are terrifying in their certainty. They talk of humors sloshing in the body, black bile, yellow bile, blood, phlegm, and how these humors hate reclining. You picture them like sulking children, crossing their arms and refusing to behave the moment you lie down. Upright, the humors are disciplined, kept in their proper places by gravity. Flat, they rebel, flooding the wrong parts, rising into the lungs, smothering the heart. The physicians insist they've seen it happen countless times, though strangely, they never provide names. Once, you watched a doctor treat a woman who had dared to nap lying down. He shook his head gravely, declaring her lungs full of damp vapors. The cure, of course, was leeches on her chest and a strict command that she sit while sleeping forever after. She lived, though whether from the leeches or because she simply sat upright from then on, no one could say. Still, the tale spread, and now half the village repeats it whenever someone complains of back pain from sleeping against the wall. Better a sore spine than lungs drowned in vapor. The irony is that the doctors never seem healthier than anyone else. They shuffle about coughing, with rings under their eyes and hands that tremble. Yet they cling to posture as their great wisdom, the one rule they can enforce on both peasants and nobles alike. Everyone fears invisible things, and vapors are invisible, which makes them perfect for controlling behavior. People can't see them, but they can imagine them, creeping into the chest the moment you recline. You think sometimes that physicians are more like priests than healers. They preach, they warn, they condemn, and their remedies are half ritual, half performance. Sleep upright, and you are faithful. Lie flat, and you are sinful. Upright posture becomes medicine, obedience, proof you're listening to learned men. You might itch with fleas, ache with hunger, cough from smoky air, but at least you won't drown in vapors, and so you obey. You tuck your knees, fold your arms, keep your back braced against rough wood. You tell yourself it's healthier, because physicians say so, and everyone knows physicians must be right, even when they're wrong. You sit until dawn, body sore, eyes heavy, but lungs supposedly clear. Somewhere deep inside, you wonder if vapors are just another name for the misery of being poor and tired. But you don't voice it. You don't challenge the wisdom that keeps everyone upright in the dark. Because here, in this age, medicine says, posture is life. And you, like everyone else, sit stiff and aching, pretending that discomfort is cure, pretending that doctors know more than you do, and waiting for morning to prove them right. Blood is everything, or so you're told. It is your strength, your warmth, your temper, your essence, and if it isn't balanced just right, you are doomed. The physicians talk about blood, the way priests talk about the soul. Mysterious, sacred, endlessly in need of supervision. They insist blood must circulate properly, never settling in the wrong corners of the body, never stagnating, never rebelling. And apparently, posture is the only thing keeping it all in line. Sit upright, and your blood flows like a well-ordered river. Lie flat, and it floods your chest, or your head, or your stomach, wherever it shouldn't be, and suddenly you're pale, weak, coughing, or worse. You imagine your blood like unruly villagers after too much ale, sloshing around the streets of your veins, trying to riot. Upright, you're the stern watchman keeping them in order. Flat, you're the drunk innkeeper asleep at the bar, and the blood does whatever it pleases. That's the story at least, told with grave certainty by men in long robes, carrying pouches of dried herbs and blades they are much too eager to use. They assure you they've seen what happens to flat sleepers: swollen faces, blackened lips, eyes that roll up toward heaven. They always say it in whispers, so you'll imagine corpses in your bed. The irony is, these same physicians bleed people on purpose, cutting arms or ankles to let the bad blood run free. They insist sickness comes from excess, from imbalance, from humors misbehaving, and draining you is the cure. You've seen strong men stagger home pale as ghosts after treatment, told it was necessary, told it saved them, though they look more like victims of theft than medicine. And still, the same men tell you to sleep sitting up, because it's safer for the blood. The neighbors repeat it endlessly. Upright posture keeps you healthy. Upright posture keeps your humors balanced. Upright posture ensures you won't die in the night. You hear it until you almost believe it, even as your back throbs and your head lolls sideways against the wall. You think about the monks, rows of them upright on wooden benches, praised for their holiness and their discipline, when really, they might just be terrified of drowning in their own blood. And the nobles too, perched like statues, propped by pillows and velvet but still stiff as fence posts. Everyone agrees. Upright means alive. You wonder sometimes if it's all guesswork, if physicians have no more idea of blood than you do. Maybe they invented balance to sound clever. Maybe they blame posture because it's easier than admitting they don't know why people die. But you don't dare say this out loud, because doubting a physician is dangerous. They know words you don't. They carry knives, and most of all, they command respect. To challenge them is to risk being labeled foolish, or worse, cursed. So you obey. You press your body upright, though it aches, though your eyes close, though your breath slows. You sit because you must, because everyone does, because the fear of blood rebellion is stronger than the call of comfort. You sit because even doubt feels dangerous when everyone around you insists this is life or death. You sit because you've seen too many funerals, too many bodies laid flat, and you don't want to join them early. The truth is, no one really knows what's happening inside the body, but stories are stronger than truth. And the story says, blood hates reclining, blood loves posture, blood only flows freely when you sit like a soldier at his post. So you fold your legs, straighten your back, and drift in and out of uneasy sleep, praying your humors behave until dawn. Leeches do not care about dignity, they only care about blood, and doctors are happy to give it to them. When a physician walks into the room with his bag of tools, the smell of vinegar and old herbs clinging to his sleeves, you already know what's coming. He waves his hand at the bench, at the stool, at the bed, anywhere you can sit, but never at the straw where you'd rather lie. Sitting is faster, he says. Sitting keeps the humors flowing. Sitting makes the bleeding easier. You know he's right in a way, but you also know he enjoys it. Patients lined up like barrels ready to be tapped. He tells you lying down traps blood in the wrong places, that the bad stuff settles like silt at the bottom of a river. Upright, the blood rises politely toward the surface, where it can be drawn out with minimal fuss. He says this with such certainty, you almost believe it's science. But you've seen the leeches work, fat and black, wriggling with hunger as they're dropped onto your skin. They don't care about posture. They'll drink you dry no matter how you sit. The only difference is that sitting makes you easier prey, your arm or leg offered up like a platter. You try not to flinch as the physician presses a leech against your forearm. It clings instantly, mouth working like a tiny pump, cold at first, then strangely warm. The doctor mutters about humors, about imbalance, about vapors and bile, while you stare at the wall and try to forget the creature feeding from you. You've heard some people faint, their bodies tipping sideways as the leeches pull, and that's exactly why the doctor wants you upright. Easier to catch you if you swoon. Easier to keep the blood flowing if gravity helps. He isn't cruel, exactly, just practiced. The leeches swell while he watches with the calm of a man tending livestock. He taps them lightly when they're full, peels them off, drops them into a jar where they wiggle sluggishly. He says sitting up makes the treatment work faster, that lying down slows the draw. You think it's because lying down makes it harder for him to reach. A patient sprawled on the floor would force him to bend, to kneel, to do something other than stand above. Sitting keeps you at his level and him at yours, a ritual of control masquerading as care. You hear stories from neighbors who tried to lie flat during bleeding. One man was dragged upright by two assistants, scolded like a child. A woman refused entirely and was left to her fever, her neighbors whispering that she had sealed her fate. Whether she recovered or not, no one knows. The story only survives as proof that posture matters. You sit, therefore you are sensible. You sit, therefore you are saved. Even after the leeches are gone, you stay upright, a little dizzy but unwilling to lean back. You imagine your blood retreating to its secret corners if you dare recline too soon, undoing the doctor's work. He gives you a nod, pleased at your discipline, and tells you to keep sitting through the night so your humors settle properly. You want to tell him you're not a barrel of wine needing to breathe, but you hold your tongue. He has knives. You have none. When he leaves, you pull your knees up and press your back to the wall, watching the marks on your skin darken where the leeches fed. The bites itch, but you don't scratch. You think of the monks, the nobles, the peasants, everyone sitting in their own way, for their own reasons, and realize you're no different. Upright because the doctor says so. Upright because everyone says so. Upright because maybe, just maybe, it's the only thing between you and worse. The jar of leeches clinks faintly as he carries it away, tiny bodies twisting against the glass, already hungry again. You sit in the quiet he leaves behind, listening to your heartbeat slow and steady, picturing your blood like obedient soldiers now marching in proper formation. Whether it's true or not, you don't know, but you stay seated, aching and pale, because leech logic is simple. If they're going to take your blood, better to make it easy before someone else does. A toothache at night is no ordinary pain. It does not whisper. It bellows, shaking your skull until it feels like a church bell ringing inside your jaw. By day, you can distract yourself with work, mutter prayers, chew only on the other side, even press a hot rag to your cheek and pretend it helps. But at night, when the village sleeps and the house is still, the ache grows bold. Lying flat turns it monstrous, each throb echoing through your head like a drumbeat you cannot silence. Upright is no cure, but at least it dulls the thunder, makes the pain feel distant rather than all-consuming. So you sit, clutching your jaw, staring into the darkness, as if the black rafters above might provide comfort. The bed of straw is already unfriendly, and now it feels like betrayal, pressing you toward a posture that promises more agony. You think of lying flat just for a moment, just to rest, but the thought alone makes the tooth pulse in warning. Upright you remain, spine rigid, head heavy, eyes raw. The remedies are many, none of them pleasant. Some swear by herbs, sage stuffed against the tooth, clove pressed into the gum, a poultice of garlic that leaves your breath worse than your pain. Others whisper charms, rub the tooth with the tooth of a corpse, chant prayers backward at midnight, bury a dead mole under the hearth. Nothing truly works, but everything is worth trying when the ache swells like fire. Still, upright posture is the constant. Always upright, because lying down makes the pain roar as though you've given it permission. You've heard of teeth being pulled, of course, but that cure is worse than the ache itself. The barber surgeon does it, with his iron tongs and his unwashed hands, gripping your jaw while others hold you down. The story always ends with screams and blood, sometimes with relief, sometimes with infection that spreads until the face blackens. No, you'll endure this pain rather than risk that. At least sitting upright makes you feel you're doing something. At least it lets you believe you're resisting. The household does not thank you for it. Your groans keep others awake. Your muttered curses disturb even the goat curled in the corner. Children whimper and pull the blanket over their ears. The cousins scold. The old aunt mutters that it's your punishment for sins unnamed. You don't argue. Pain itself feels like guilt, like proof you deserve punishment, though you cannot name the crime. So you sit, alone in your suffering, jaw clenched against the waves of agony, refusing the bed that tempts you. Sometimes you drift into shallow sleep, head nodding forward, and you dream of feasts where every bite shatters your teeth, of priests who demand penance in the form of chewing rocks, of rats gnawing at your face. You wake with a start, pain surging worse than before, and sit straighter as if posture alone can ward off the demons gnawing inside your mouth. The irony is that everyone suffers this eventually. No one escapes toothache. Even nobles, with their honeyed sweets and rich wines, clutch their jaws and pace their halls in the night. The difference is only in surroundings. You against a cold wall, them against velvet pillows, but both upright, both prisoners to the same cruel drumbeat. Teeth do not care about status. Teeth betray everyone. You imagine sometimes what life would be without them, smooth gums untroubled, meals softened to gruel. Perhaps then you could lie flat without fear, breathe without ache, sleep without sitting like a soldier on endless watch. But teeth are here to stay, and so is the pain. So you stay upright, nursing your misery, waiting for dawn. You know the tooth will not heal, that it will only worsen, that one day the surgeon's tongs may be the only answer. But for now, sitting is your medicine, your compromise, your last defense against pain that always grows sharper in the dark. Pregnancy is already a mystery wrapped in fear, but in your village, it comes wrapped in instructions too. Women are told, with deadly seriousness, that posture determines fate. Sit upright, and the child grows safely, blessed and strong. Lie flat, and the womb opens itself to darkness, inviting demons to creep in and claim the infant. No one says how demons know the difference, only that they do, and that they are opportunists. You've heard the warning since childhood. Grandmothers cluck their tongues at young wives, reminding them of the neighbor who dozed lying down and birthed a child with too many fingers. Midwives tell stories of infants who cried like cats, born to mothers who dared to sprawl. The priests are harsher still, pointing to upright women as holy and obedient, while accusing flat sleepers of sloth and sin. Comfort is not an option when the stakes are a child's soul. So the women sit. They sit with swollen ankles, with aching backs, with bellies that push them forward until balance feels impossible. They prop themselves on stools, against walls, even against one another. Sleep comes in snatches, shallow and broken, but they accept it. Better exhaustion than demons, better stiffness than shame. A baby born strange is never blamed on chance or sickness, always on the mother, always on posture. The men do not help, of course, they only enforce. A husband sees his wife leaning too far and jolts her awake, scolding that she'll doom the family. Brothers tease their sisters, cousins whisper warnings, neighbors wag their heads. A woman's rest belongs to the community, everyone invested in her vigilance. The shame of lying down is greater than the ache of sleeplessness, so she stays upright, even when tears threaten, even when her body begs for the floor. Midwives bring their own remedies, pillows stuffed with wool to wedge between knees, benches built just high enough to keep a woman half-seated, even ropes hung from beams so she can lean without collapsing. They swear these methods keep both mother and child safe, and perhaps they do. Or perhaps they only make the nights longer, the days heavier, the pain sharper. But no one dares test the alternative. Sometimes you hear of women in labor who slip flat out of exhaustion. The stories are always told with a shiver. The babies come red-faced, still, or screaming, and everyone nods as though it proves the rule. No one mentions that childbirth itself is dangerous, that women die even when they've sat upright every night for 9 months. Death itself becomes proof of disobedience. Upright women must have faltered in secret. It is cruel, but cruelty is tradition. Posture becomes ritual, just as prayers are, just as fasting is. Upright mothers are praised, their children blessed, their endurance admired. Flat sleepers are whispered about for years, their failures remembered long after the grave. A child's crooked teeth or sour temper will be blamed on a mother who once lay down in the night. And so you watch the women rock and doze against the walls, their eyes hollow, their bodies rigid, their hands resting protectively over swollen bellies. You see their strength, their stubbornness, their silent endurance. They will not risk their babies, no matter the cost. They will not lie flat, no matter the ache. The demons, whether real or imagined, will find no welcome here. Because in this world, sitting upright is not just posture. It is sacrifice. It is love, disguised as discipline. It is a woman's body turned into armor, night after night, against fears too old and deep to be argued away. And when the child finally comes, alive and whole, the mother's exhaustion is forgotten, her sleepless months dismissed as only what was expected. Upright was her duty. Upright was her proof. Upright was the only way to be good. Robbers don't care if you're tired. They don't wait for dawn, or for you to finish your prayers, or for the fire to burn down low. They come in the middle of the night, when shadows stretch long and fear tastes sharp in your mouth. They slip past creaking doors, their footsteps soft on straw, their breath louder than you want it to be. And you know, as every villager knows, that lying flat when thieves arrive is just asking to die in your sleep. Upright is survival, because upright means you're halfway armed already. You've seen what happens to those who don't keep vigil. A farmer 2 fields over was caught snoring on his back, while robbers carried away half his grain. They left him alive, but his wife never forgave him. She said his sloth was the real theft, worse than the missing food. Another man woke to a knife at his throat, too slow to grab the pitchfork resting by the wall. His family still whispers about it, still shakes their heads as though his foolishness was contagious. Everyone remembers the lesson. Upright keeps you ready. Upright keeps you dangerous. Your pitchfork rests close, its handle within reach, worn smooth by hands gripping it night after night. You don't fool yourself into thinking it makes you invincible. But a thief expects weakness, expects a sleeper soft and prone, and finding you already braced on the pallet, eyes open, weapon in hand, it unsettles them. Even if you're shaking, even if your heart hammers so hard it might break your ribs, upright posture is a kind of armor. The watchman's bell is far away, too far to save you in time. Neighbors might hear shouts, but they'll hesitate before rushing out, because no one wants to die for someone else's flour sack. No, you are your own defense. That is why you sit up, spine straight, refusing the temptation of lying flat. Upright, you can spring to your feet in a blink. Upright, you can swing before the blade finds you. Upright, you can at least look like someone worth fearing. The darkness plays tricks on your mind. Every creak of wood or scuttle of rat magnified into a robber's footfall. Sometimes you wonder if robbers even come that often, or if the fear of them is what truly keeps you sitting stiff in the night. But the stories are enough. Stories of barns set aflame, of mothers bound while children cried, of men beaten when they rolled over too slowly. Fear doesn't need proof. It only needs possibility. And so you stay ready. Even nobles do it. Though their robbers are assassins, their pitchforks replaced with daggers under silk sheets, they too keep half-sitting, alert even in sleep, unwilling to surrender themselves to comfort. Posture unites everyone in the same tense vigil, from hut to castle, from peasant to king. The difference is only in weapons and wealth, not in fear. Your own family understands. The children curl upright too, mimicking your stiffness, as though their small backs could bear the weight of responsibility. The goat sleeps against the wall, half guard, half companion, its ears twitching at the slightest noise. The household becomes an army, silent and waiting, posture turned into defiance. If thieves come, they will not find you sprawled and helpless. They will find you coiled like a spring, straw sticking to your hair, eyes burning in the dark. Sometimes nothing happens. Most nights nothing does. Dawn creeps in, and you wonder if you've wasted hours sitting awake for nothing. But then you remember the farmer, the man with the knife at his throat, the stories of barns smoldering. You remember that nothing is the victory. Upright posture kept you safe again, even if the threat never came. So you stay as you always do, perched between sleep and waking, your hand close to the pitchfork, your breath shallow, your body aching but alive. Because in this world, robbers are real, fear is real, and sitting upright is the only shield you can afford. Wolves sing their songs at midnight, long and low, echoing through the trees until the hair on your arms rises. The fire has burned down to coals. The goat shifts nervously in the corner, and every child presses closer under the blanket. You sit upright, every muscle taut, gripping the only weapon left within reach, a spoon, not a sword, not even a knife, but a spoon, dented from years of porridge. Still, in your hands, it feels like defiance. The sound is impossible to ignore. Wolves do not bark like dogs or whine like strays. They announce themselves in that drawn-out chorus that makes the night feel suddenly endless. You imagine their yellow eyes gleaming from the forest edge, their paws pressing soft against the dirt, their teeth shining in the faint moonlight. They are out there, and they are hungry, and you know they know you're here. Sitting upright isn't bravery so much as necessity. You can't lie flat while listening to predators circle your world. Your body refuses rest. Every snap of a twig outside jolts you alert. Every shuffle of straw inside becomes a threat. You tell yourself the spoon will be enough, that wolves are only beasts, that noise and movement can scare them. But deep down, you know it's a fragile hope. A pack of wolves can tear through goats, through oxen, through men armed with spears. What can a spoon do? And yet you sit tighter, fingers wrapped so hard around the handle that your knuckles ache. Upright means ready. Upright means you won't be caught helpless when they come. The stories return unbidden. Wolves dragging sheep from fields, wolves carrying children into the dark, wolves waiting for travelers on the road. Old women tell them with relish, describing blood in the snow and footprints leading nowhere. Priests use them too, painting wolves as punishments for sin, beasts sent by God to remind men of their weakness. Whether fable or truth, the lesson is clear. Never let your guard drop. Lying flat is invitation. Sitting upright is vigilance. The others drift in uneasy half-sleep, but you remain the sentinel, staring at the door, at the cracks where cold air seeps in. You picture the wolves pressing their muzzles against it, testing the latch with patient persistence. You imagine them slinking onto the roof, claws scratching at the rafters. You know wolves are clever enough to wait until exhaustion bends your posture, clever enough to strike when the spoon falls from your hand. That is why you stay upright, even as your back screams and your eyelids sag. The fire pops, and you nearly swing, spoon raised like steel, ready for a fight that doesn't come. The children giggle nervously, but you hush them, because laughter might carry, and wolves don't need encouragement. You press a finger to your lips and listen again. The howling has quieted, which is worse. Silence means movement. Silence means they are closer. Silence means the hunt has begun. You remember that nobles hunt wolves for sport, mounting their skins on walls, boasting of the kill. For peasants, wolves hunt you. Wolves mount your losses in bones scattered across the snow. The nobility might have crossbows, dogs, guards at the gates. You have straw, fear, and a spoon. The contrast is almost funny. If the danger weren't so real, minutes drag into hours. The howling does not return, but the silence is heavy with threat. You do not dare recline, not even for a heartbeat. You sit until your body feels carved from wood, until your spoon feels welded to your palm, until the first gray light of dawn creeps in through the cracks. Only then do you ease your grip. Only then do your shoulders loosen. The wolves have not come this night, though you know they will return. Still, you remain upright long after the house stirs, because the memory of their song lingers. And you know, in the marrow of your bones, that if you lie flat, they'll know. Somehow, they'll sense your weakness, and the door will splinter, and teeth will find your throat. Upright is the only shield you have left. Upright is the only way to keep fear from winning. Upright, spoon clutched like a weapon, you sit against the dawn, alive for one more day. The bells never ask permission. They toll whenever they wish, and you have no choice but to listen. Midnight, dawn, somewhere in between. Time is slippery, but the sound cuts through all of it. Metal on air, dragging you from half-dreams into full wakefulness. The church insists the bells are sacred reminders, calls to prayer, warnings against sin, but you know they are simply loud. You feel them in your teeth, in your bones, vibrating through the walls like an uninvited guest who pounds on the door until you answer. Lying flat when the bells ring feels dangerous. It looks lazy, even rebellious. Upright, though, upright, means you're already halfway to kneeling, halfway to the act of piety the bells demand. You can swing your legs down, fold your hands, bow your head, all without the embarrassment of being caught sprawling, because someone is always watching. If not your neighbors, then the saints, or worse, the priest, who claims he knows when you miss prayers. You don't ask how, but you believe him. Because priests know things ordinary people aren't meant to. So you sit stiff in the dark, listening to the clang echo through the valley. Sometimes it means a feast day, sometimes a funeral, sometimes an alarm that wolves or fire or thieves have come. And sometimes, you suspect, it means nothing at all. Just a bored bell ringer, tugging the rope to remind everyone that he controls their sleep. You curse him silently, but you don't lie down. Upright posture is your shield against accusation. The bells also wake children, goats, chickens, everyone in the house, and chaos follows. Crying babies, clucking hens, the goat stamping in alarm, all of them stirred from their shallow rest. You sit higher, pretending calm, even as your own heart thunders, because if you show fear, they'll show more. The household depends on you to look like you understand the bells, to pretend they are less frightening than they sound. Neighbors gossip about those who fail to rise when the bells toll. They say sloth invites demons, that ignoring the summons brings bad luck, that God himself notices who chooses comfort over devotion. You can't risk being that person. You've seen reputations ruined over less. So you join the charade, yawning into your sleeve, rubbing your eyes, whispering a prayer you barely remember, all while perched upright like a soldier awaiting orders. The irony is that no one sleeps deeply anyway. The straw bed is too scratchy, the air too smoky, the fleas too restless. But the bells ensure even shallow rest is fractured, shattered into fragments of wakefulness. You wonder, sometimes if it's deliberate, if the church believes exhaustion keeps people obedient. Tired bodies don't rebel. Tired minds don't ask questions. Tired villagers just sit upright, waiting for instructions, nodding along to every sermon. You picture the bell high in its tower, swinging with a force that feels inhuman, the rope whipping with each pull, the sound stretching across miles. It doesn't matter if you're inside your hut or out in the fields. It finds you, it commands you, and your body obeys before your mind even has time to argue. Upright, awake, listening, always listening. There are moments, in the silence after, when you almost lie back down, but the echo lingers, phantom tolls in your ears, and you can't shake the thought that to sprawl again is to invite punishment. So you stay seated, heavy-eyed, muttering prayers you barely mean, keeping yourself half ready until the dawn comes. Because in this world, sleep belongs not to you, but to the bells. And sitting upright is the only way to survive their demands with your soul and your reputation intact. The market doesn't sleep. It just moves into the shadows. By day you see the stalls, the shouting, the turnips piled high, and the bread gone stale by midday. By night it all slips into whispers, torches, and corners where goods change hands without coin clinking too loudly. You never plan to be part of it, but you always hear it first, because you're sitting upright while others sprawl like fools. Their heads are heavy on straw, their ears stuffed with snores, but yours are open, catching every shuffle outside the door. It starts small. A wheel creaks, a muffled laugh, the sound of hooves where no one should be riding. Then comes the bargaining, voices low but urgent, words stretched into secrecy. Turnips, onions, sometimes dried fish if the river was kind. Ale by the jug, cheese traded from hands that don't want names. You tell yourself you're not listening, but of course you are. Upright posture makes you the unwilling witness to the village's after-hours life. Sometimes it's exciting. You hear about a baker's apprentice selling loaves still warm from the oven, stolen while the master dozed, or a farmer slipping sacks of grain to neighbors in exchange for favors never spoken aloud. Upright, you know the gossip before the sun rises, while others wake clueless, wondering how bread arrived on the table of someone who swore they were starving yesterday. Sitting like a sentinel means you can piece together secrets without lifting a finger. But sometimes it's dangerous. Not all markets are friendly. Thieves mix with traders, and what's sold isn't always honest. You've heard the sharp clink of knives, the shuffle of stolen boots, The two quiet murmurs about livestock that isn't really for sale but for ransom. Upright, you sit with your back pressed to the wall, pretending not to hear, praying they don't decide your house looks like easy business. Lying flat would make you helpless. Upright means you could grab a stick, shout, wake the household before strangers slip inside. The church frowns on these midnight markets, calling them sins, evidence of greed and disorder. But the priests sleep too, and they don't sit upright in smoke-filled huts with ears twitching at every sound. They don't know hunger the way you do, the kind that makes people trade bread in the dark rather than starve in the light. They preach honesty in the day and ignore the deals at night. You suspect even they benefit, because someone always ends up with extra wine in the cellar. You think about the nobles in their halls, feasting until late, trading favors with gold and parchment while the peasants trade onions and hope outside. The difference feels smaller at night, though. Both are secret markets, both are shadows, both are bargains whispered while others sleep. Upright, you're part of it, even if you never buy or sell. Just listening makes you complicit. Just hearing the voices means you share in the secrets, though you'll never admit it aloud. Your family stirs sometimes, asking what woke you, but you hush them. Better they don't know. Better they believe you stay upright only for demons, for wolves, for holy reasons. If they ask, you mutter prayers under your breath, disguising eavesdropping as piety. No one questions a prayer said in the dark. No one asks why you're still awake when the bells have long stopped ringing. By dawn, the market is gone, the road is quiet, the air still, and the only proof of what happened are faint tracks in the mud and whispers in the morning chatter. You stretch your aching back, rub your eyes, and pretend you slept. Inside, you carry the knowledge of who bartered what, who risked punishment for a taste of comfort. Upright sleep leaves you weary, but it leaves you informed. And in a world where hunger, wolves, priests, and pigs all wait for weakness, knowing is as good as bread. Sitting upright keeps you alive, yes, but it also keeps you aware. You hear first, you see sooner, you know more. And when everyone else stumbles blind into the day, you're already one step ahead. The night market's secrets folded quietly into your chest. The night watch is never optional. Someone must sit awake, eyes on the road, ears open for wolves, thieves, fires, or worse. Tonight it's your turn, though really it feels like it's always your turn. The others mutter about fairness and duty, but somehow when the dice roll or the lots are drawn, the burden finds its way into your lap. Still, you're not surprised. You've been sitting upright all along, half asleep with your back against the wall, so when they call your name you only straighten a little more. Outside, the air is colder than it should be, biting your nose and stiffening your fingers. The moon glows like a pale coin caught in a cloud's fist, casting long shadows across the huts. Every shape looks suspicious in the dark. Woodpile becomes crouching figure. Tree becomes cloaked. Man, goat becomes demon until it snorts and shuffles. You clutch your staff tighter, forcing your eyes to stay open. Upright is not enough here. Upright is survival, but watchfulness is expectation. The silence is never truly silent. You hear the owls hunting, the rats scurrying, the restless coughs of sleepers inside. From far off, a wolf calls, answered by another, and you swallow hard, but you don't move from your seat by the door. Upright means ready. Upright means, if danger comes, you won't waste time scrambling from the straw. You are a wall now, flimsy but defiant, a body placed between the village and whatever prowls in the dark. You think of the watchman who came before, the one who swore he'd stay alert but fell asleep against the fence. They found him at dawn, the pig pen broken open, half the animals gone. His shame lasted longer than the hunger. No one trusted him after that, not with tools, not with tasks, not even with gossip. Falling asleep on watch is worse than cowardice. It is betrayal. You remind yourself of this as your eyelids sag. You jab your thigh with the butt of the staff until you're wide awake again. Sometimes there are false alarms. A fox skulks near the chickens, or a drunk staggers too close, or the wind rattles shutters until you imagine robbers. Each time you leap up, heart racing, only to find nothing worth the fear. But that doesn't matter. The villagers don't measure you by how much you fight, only by whether you were awake to notice. If you sit upright through the night, they nod approval in the morning. If you lie flat, if you miss even one sound, your name will be cursed for months. There's pride in it too, though you'd never admit it aloud. To be the watch is to matter, to be the one standing between safety and chaos. You sit higher, straighten your back further, pretending the staff in your hand is a spear and that you are more than a weary farmer pressed into duty. For a heartbeat you feel like a knight on guard, though your armor is rags and your castle is a hut with a leaky roof. Upright makes the illusion stronger. Upright makes it feel real. The hours crawl. The fire sputters. The cold seeps deeper. But still you sit, because upright is expectation. Upright is honor. Upright is the difference between being trusted and being shamed. And when dawn finally arrives, staining the horizon with pale light, you are still there, bleary but unbroken. The village stirs, the children whine for bread, and someone claps your shoulder with approval. You say nothing, only nod, hiding the ache in your bones, the heaviness in your eyes. Inside, you know you'll be called again, that another night will find you in the same spot, upright and waiting. Because the night watch is not about choice. It is about proving, again and again, that you can stay awake while the world dreams. You dream while sitting upright, and that makes all the difference. At least that's what they tell you. And when everyone from the parish priest to the gossiping woman who sells turnips swears it's true, you decide it must be. Dreams that arrive while your spine is straight are whispers from heaven, signs sent down like candlelight breaking through stained glass. Dreams that slither in while you're flat on your back, those belong to the devil, spawned from the rot in your belly and the smoke curling off your neighbor's chimney. Upright makes you a vessel of purity. Lying down makes you a demon's plaything. You want to laugh at the superstition, but you've seen how people behave. They wake with visions of saints smiling, or angels lifting them into radiant clouds, and all nod wisely that it's because they stayed bolt upright through the night. Then there are those who dared recline fully, who wake screaming about hounds with red eyes or shadows sitting on their chest. When that happens, no one blames the meat, stew, or the sour ale. No, everyone mutters that sleeping flat opened the door wide to hell. It's not indigestion, it's Satan, and he came because your posture was sloppy. When you're young, the difference feels arbitrary, but as the years drag on, you learn how the rules press on everything. Dream upright, and you're invited to retell it in the square, neighbors clucking approval, some even searching for omens in your words. Lie down and dream of fire, and suddenly your house is being sprinkled with holy water. Your mother is whispering to saints, and your name is spoken with suspicion. Posture is prophecy. Sleep becomes a test you cannot afford to fail. The problem is that dreams aren't neat. Upright or not, they come in jumbled waves. You sit propped against the wall, your head tilting forward as slumber drags you under, and still you dream of chasing goats that suddenly sprout wings, or of rivers made of barley stew. In the morning, you struggle to decide if such images are holy or not. Maybe they're warnings, maybe they're nonsense, but everyone else insists that because you were upright, they must mean something. A man once told you, after dreaming upright, that he saw a shining bread loaf floating through the air. Within the week, the mill broke down, and everyone took it as proof of divine foreshadowing. There's a kind of pressure in that. Sitting upright means every dream must be dissected, weighed for meaning, paraded as message. People ask what you saw in the night, expecting revelations about harvest or rain, never content with the truth that most of the time you dream only of trying to sleep. Still, you learn to embellish. You learn to say you saw stars forming a pattern or a bird carrying a golden twig, and their eyes widen with wonder. It doesn't matter if you made it up. The posture sanctifies it. And yet, when you occasionally drift flat in weakness, the world punishes you. Once, after a feast of cheese and ale, you toppled sideways without meaning to. The dream was vivid. Wolves circling, teeth bared, howls that rattled your bones. When you told your family, they hissed in horror, not because of the wolves, but because you admitted you'd slipped down. For weeks, you were eyed as though you carried a shadow behind you, as though the devil might be tugging at your sleeve. No one trusted your dreams after that, not even when they were pleasant. Posture had ruined them. You sit upright now even when your back aches, even when your neck protests, because you've learned that dreams are currency. Upright dreams can buy you respect, can lift your voice in the village. Lying dreams bankrupt you. They make you the fool, the vessel of demons, the one whose words no one should heed. So you keep your shoulders square and your legs folded, because your future is balanced on your spine. And in the deep of night, when sleep overtakes you despite the stiffness, you drift into a dream where nothing happens at all. No saints, no demons, no symbols, just darkness, soft and endless. When morning comes, you rise and tell them you saw light in the void. They nod, satisfied. Upright dreams are holy, after all. You watch the animals, and you wonder why people decided they needed to be different. Dogs curl nose to tail, snoring like they've discovered the secret to eternal comfort. Cats spread themselves across anything warm, a smug puddle of fur on the one blanket you actually wanted. Chickens tuck their heads beneath their wings, and pigs collapse into heaps of flesh and grunts, looking as though they've melted into the mud. Every creature seems perfectly content with sprawling or curling, but not humans. No, you must rise above, literally, because sitting upright is apparently proof that you aren't livestock. The comparison is unflattering. If you lie flat, someone is bound to point and mutter that you look just like the pigs out in the sty. A dangerous insult in a world where pigs are blamed for gluttony, for filth, for all the sins that humans would rather not admit belong to them too. So you sit, back stiff, as though posture itself might be your ticket out of the barnyard category. You can almost hear the elders lecturing. Animals sprawl on their bellies. Animals wallow in their own heat. Upright, you are closer to the angels. It's not just vanity, though, at least not entirely. People believe posture has power. Dogs dream of bones. Cats dream of hunting. Pigs dream of whatever pigs dream of, probably turnips. But when you sit upright, it's believed your dreams stretch higher, into celestial spaces, reaching realms animals could never touch. Falling asleep flat, like a dog by the hearth, means your visions will be small and earthly, good only for predicting rain or spoiled cheese. Sitting straight means your dreams might foretell the fate of a kingdom. Of course, most of the time, your dreams are about stew, but you still nod along to the idea that posture divides beasts from prophets. You've seen the way neighbors talk about it. A boy falls asleep curled like a puppy, and everyone teases him for days, calling him Piglet, whispering that his wife will be fat as a sow. Another is caught stretched across the straw like a cat, and they laugh that he'll lick his own paws next. But when someone nods off sitting upright, even drooling, even with their head lolling forward like a wilted cabbage, people nod solemnly and murmur, "Ah yes, very proper, very human," as though posture erases the mess of the rest of your life. At night, when the house is full and the fire dim, you catch yourself studying the goat pressed against the wall. It sleeps with eyes half shut, legs folded awkwardly beneath it, chewing phantom grass. And you realize your own sleeping pose doesn't look so different, but you cling to the belief that it does, that your conscious effort to hold yourself more vertical is proof of your superiority. If goats could speak, they'd laugh at the roofred effort. They already sleep that way naturally. There are tales spun to keep you in line, of course. Old women mutter that if you sleep like an animal, you'll wake with animal habits, scratching in the dirt for food, rolling in ash, even grunting instead of speaking. One man in the village, who always lay flat, was said to have snorted like a pig every morning until his wife forced him into a chair at night. Another was accused of growing hairier from sprawling like a beast, though everyone ignored the fact that he came from a line of hairy men anyway. Stories do the work of shame better than reason, so you train yourself. You force your limbs into positions that no beast would tolerate, your head propped awkwardly, your knees at angles that ache by morning. You do it because you've been told humans are not animals, even though you spend your days mucking stalls and eating whatever grain hasn't spoiled. The distinction feels fragile, built mostly on posture and pride, yet it's the one that everyone clings to. And sometimes, in the stillness of night, when you hear the pigs sighing in their sty and the dog twitching in dreams by the hearth, you wonder if they've got it right. If sprawling, tail to snout, or belly up in surrender is closer to truth than your stiff-backed vigil. But you don't let the thought linger, because tomorrow you'll be asked about your dreams, and you'll need to describe something lofty. You'll need to prove that your posture, at least, is closer to heaven than to the mud. You hear it whispered first from the lips of the priest, then echoed by the weavers at the market, then hammered into your ears by every gray-headed neighbor who insists they know best. Saints did it this way. Saints sat bolt upright through the night, spines like flagpoles, eyes shut only halfway, purity preserved in posture. Their example hangs over you like a heavy cloak. It isn't enough to pray or to fast or to mutter your psalms until your lips crack. No, you must also master the discipline of sleeping in a position that feels one step removed from torture. The stories come embroidered with holy exaggeration. Saint Crispin, they say, never once lay flat from cradle to grave. He leaned against a cold stone wall for decades, slumbering in perfect verticality, so pure that angels themselves came to fluff his non-existent pillow. Saint Gertrude, so the nuns claim, sat on a three-legged stool every night until dawn, nodding like a saintly pigeon, because reclining was too close to surrendering to the flesh. Saint whoever else. The details change with each telling. Tied himself upright with cords, so tight his body bore marks that peasants mistook for divine tattoos. And the message is clear. If you want even a glimmer of heaven, you had better stiffen your spine. The tales seep into daily life. You see a man in the tavern snoring upright against the wall, and no one dares mock him. They mutter that perhaps he is imitating Saint Crispin, that perhaps the wine on his breath masks true holiness. Children try to mimic the saints for a night or two, wobbling upright in their straw pallets until they topple sideways, but parents beam at the attempt. Even failure, they insist, shows promise. Holiness is measured less in deeds than in degrees of verticality. But it is hard, bone-grindingly hard. You sit propped against a beam, trying to embody saintly resolve, but your back knots itself into shapes you didn't think possible, and your neck bends forward like a wilted onion stalk. You wonder how saints endured it for lifetimes. Maybe their bones were blessed, or maybe the stories left out the detail that even saints groaned and shifted and cursed under their breath. Still, you press on, because to lie flat is to invite suspicion. To lie flat is to align yourself with corpses and pigs, not martyrs and holy men. Dreams, too, are judged by saintly posture. Upright, your half-remembered visions of flickering candles or distant bells are interpreted as divine messages. Someone always insists that the saints dreamt this way too, that Saint Gertrude once foresaw a plague in just such a dream, that Saint Crispin's upright slumber revealed the secrets of shoemaking. If you nod off lying down and dream of anything at all, it is dismissed as fleshly indulgence, not prophecy. Even your imagination bends under the pressure of posture. What you notice, though, is that the stories grow taller with every retelling. Today, it is saints who sat upright in prayerful purity. Tomorrow it will be saints who never slept at all, who spent their lives suspended between waking and holiness, glowing faintly like embers. Already the details slip into absurdity. Saints who supposedly rested while kneeling on peas, saints who propped themselves on swords, saints who simply willed sleep into fleeing. And the people drink these tales like ale, nodding solemnly, clutching them like proof that suffering equals sanctity. And you, well, you keep your seat, though your muscles ache, though your breath grows shallow, though your dreams are no clearer than the smoke rising from the hearth. You sit because you are told saints did, and to do otherwise would mean stepping away from the path they carved with their weary spines. Maybe the saints themselves would laugh at the devotion. Maybe they would tell you they were just tired travelers who leaned against walls because beds were worse than stones. You'll never know. But the stories have power, and in the end, stories are stronger than comfort. So you sit upright, eyes fluttering, limbs stiff, waiting for dawn to break, and for someone to ask if you dreamed. And you'll say yes, even if you didn't. You'll say you dreamed of light, or of bells, or of a saint standing tall, and they will nod and smile, because upright dreams, like upright saints, must be holy. You sit down at the end of the day and try to stretch your body flat across the pallet, but the warning echoes in your head before you've even closed your eyes. Don't. Villagers whisper it in every corner. Lying down is the quickest way to drown in your own sleep. Not drowning in water, mind you. No river, no lake, not even the slop bucket tipped over. No, they mean drowning of the soul. The chest collapses, the breath stalls, the spirit sinks into unseen depths. Sleep flat, and you'll never wake. It's not difficult to believe when you think of the air in your house, heavy with smoke from the fire, curling thick as wool in your lungs. You lie down once, try to breathe, and it feels as if stew itself is being ladled into your throat. You cough, you sputter, you bolt upright, and the lesson is learned. Upright means safety. Upright means air finds its way into you instead of pressing down like wet cloth. People around you repeat the tale of a cousin or neighbor who dared stretch out flat, only to choke in the night. It doesn't matter if the cousin also had lungs, like crumbling leather after years of working in the forge. The moral is the same. Sleep flat, drown. Children grow up hearing it. Mothers rock them, whispering prayers and propping them upright against their shoulders, as though posture alone keeps the little souls from slipping into watery depths. Even when you're old enough to understand that your bed is nowhere near a pond, you still hear it. The baker says it, the shepherd says it, even the drunkard staggering out of the tavern mutters it before collapsing into his chair. Never sleep flat. You can fight thieves, you can fight famine, but you can't fight drowning in your own bed. And so you sit, you lean against the wall, against a bundled cloak, against your cousin if you must, anything to keep yourself angled high enough to breathe. Your body doesn't thank you for it. Your neck stiffens, your back burns, and your legs go numb halfway through the night. But discomfort is better than death. When dawn comes, and you're still alive, you nod proudly to yourself, a silent victory over invisible waters. The fear seeps into dreams too. When you nod off flat by mistake, your mind plunges into visions of flooding rivers, of wells overflowing, of dark oceans with hands tugging you down. You wake, gasping, and you know everyone will interpret it the same way. Proof that lying flat nearly drowned your soul. Upright, the dreams are tamer, flickers of saints, glimpses of fields, sometimes only endless black. Better blackness than the choking waves of a flat sleeper's folly. People use the belief as explanation for everything. A man dies in the night, and no one questions illness or age. They shake their heads, whispering that he must have slipped flat, that he invited the waters into his chest. A woman wakes with a cough, and neighbors scold her for lying on her side. Children laugh about the devil, dragging the flat sleepers into underground lakes, but even laughter is laced with fear. Because what if it's true? What if posture is the only barrier between your body and a watery grave? It even shapes where you place your bed, too near the floor, and people frown, insisting the dampness will pull your breath right out of you. Higher up, sitting upright, closer to beams and windows, you're safer. You've climbed a ladder without moving. The very architecture of your house bends to the superstition. Sleeping platforms, angled stools, anything that props you above the imagined flood. In quiet moments, you wonder if the fear is really about water at all. Maybe it's about control. Upright feels like you're prepared, like you're resisting chaos, like your chest is ready to rise and fall with purpose. Lying flat feels too much like surrender, like death. And death, in the end, is the greatest drowning of them all. So you obey the whispers. You sit. You let your head loll forward, your spine stiffen, your breath scrape through the night. And when morning comes, when you rise with your soul still lodged firmly in your chest, you give silent thanks, not for comfort, not for peace, but for staying dry in a world where even sleep threatens to drown you. You sit stiff-backed on your straw pallet, knees drawn up, hands folded loosely in your lap. It's not comfortable, but comfort is never the point. The point is readiness. Upright posture, they tell you, keeps your body one breath, one twitch of a muscle away from rising. Sleep becomes less a rest and more a watch, a long shift where your dreams are interrupted by the thought that the bread still needs baking, the animals still need feeding, the fire still needs tending. Lying flat would mean sinking into softness, but upright, you are taut, primed, like a bow that might let loose at any second. It's the way the world trains you from the start. Children are rocked to sleep upright, their heads knocking gently against their mother's collarbone, as if they too should be prepared to leap into chores as soon as they can toddle. Men come back from the fields, too tired to undress, and collapse half-sitting against the doorframe, eyes closed, but bodies angled, as though they could be shaken awake for another round of scything. Women sit propped by the hearth with babes still tied to their fronts, a hand ready to stir the pot even in dreams. The posture itself becomes a sermon. Sloth is sin, and sloth begins with lying flat. You feel it in your bones. When you wake upright, you rise faster. No fumbling, no groggy dragging of limbs. The posture is supposed to sharpen you, to prove you're never unfit for labor. Flat sleepers wake slowly, like corpses being coaxed back to life. Upright sleepers spring up, or so people like to claim, like soldiers already halfway to battle. It doesn't matter that your neck aches for hours or that your legs tingle from poor circulation. What matters is that you can lurch to your feet before the rooster has finished clearing his throat. Neighbors watch posture with suspicion. If someone is caught flat in the early hours, the gossip starts immediately. Ah, no wonder his fields look so poor. Or, well, what else can you expect from a man too lazy to keep his back straight in sleep? To doze upright is not just habit but reputation. It proves your soul is aligned with duty, that you live ready to serve, to labor, to bear burdens. Slouch too far, and you are branded unreliable, flat, and you are already judged as halfway buried. It seeps into your dreams. Even in the thick fog of sleep, you see images of work waiting. Sheep breaking free of their pen, bread loaves collapsing in the oven, the ale casks leaking in the dark. Upright, you dream that you stand ready to fix them, even though your body is bound by stillness. Lying down, those same dreams twist into panic, into endless chasing, into failures too heavy to bear. So you stick with the upright dreams, the kind that trick you into thinking you are managing life even while unconscious. Priests preach it too, folding readiness into holiness. Be vigilant, they say, for none knows the hour. And vigilance, of course, cannot happen if you are stretched on your back, arms flung wide, mouth gaping open. Vigilance happens upright, eyelids heavy but spine unbent. Saints are depicted seated, never sprawled. Martyrs close their eyes in chains, never on cushions. You are reminded over and over that God favors those who keep themselves on edge, even in the hours meant for rest. There's a cruel genius in it. Upright sleeping robs you of deep rest but convinces you that this deprivation is virtue. You stumble through days half dreaming, but with pride, because exhaustion feels like proof that you're always at the ready. There's honor in stiffness, they say, shame in ease. The less your body thanks you, the more your community does. And so you stay upright. You shift and groan. You prop yourself with cloaks and sacks of grain. You adjust until your spine creaks like a beam in the rafters. And all the while you tell yourself it's good, it's holy, it's necessary. Because if the goat escapes, if the fire sparks, if the Lord himself descends, you will already be sitting there, half awake, prepared, ready for anything, ready for nothing, but ready all the same. The festival begins with trumpets, drums, and the smell of roasted meat wafting down crooked lanes, but it always ends the same way. Benches lined with bodies, heads bobbing like broken puppets, whole villages sitting slumped upright because lying down in public would be far too close to indecency. The mead flows until mugs clatter empty, and the musicians play until their fingers stiffen, but no one dares collapse flat. Upright is the law of the night. Upright looks respectable, even if your eyes are rolling back in your skull and your mouth hangs open like a drawbridge. You sit among them, mug in hand, swaying slightly to the left, then to the right, until the bench feels like it is rocking beneath you. On one side, a blacksmith snores thunderously, upright as a statue, one hand still clutching a chicken leg as though he's guarding treasure. On the other, a shepherd hums tunelessly in his sleep, eyes closed, lips moving as if he's reciting prayers to sheep-shaped saints. The square echoes with the sound of simultaneous snoring, a symphony of nasal trumpets rising above the last embers of the bonfire. Children dart between benches, laughing at the adults who once scolded them for falling asleep in church, now lined up like scarecrows in various states of collapse. One boy waves a stick in front of a farmer's face, testing whether he'll wake. The farmer doesn't stir, only lets out a wheeze so violent that the boy yelps and drops the stick. Everyone watching cackles, but no one moves the farmer. He's upright, and upright means proper. To drag him onto the ground would be sacrilege. The priests, too, hover at the edges of the crowd, muttering half-hearted blessings as though they can sanctify drunkenness with a sprinkle of holy words. They insist the saints themselves celebrated feast days with merriment, though none of them dare confirm whether saints also drooled while snoring upright on borrowed stools. The clergy look away politely from the spectacle, but deep down, you suspect they prefer benches of dozing drunkards to a square littered with sprawled bodies. One looks like a festival, the other looks like a battlefield. There is a strange dignity in the chaos. Upright, everyone appears almost ready to rejoin the living, if only nudged awake. Merchants still clutch purses. Bakers keep arms folded across their chests. Mothers lean against each other with children asleep in their laps. A passerby might think they are simply pausing mid-conversation, taking a moment before continuing the revel. Only the snores and the occasional belch give away the truth. The benches themselves groan under the weight, wood bending, nails squeaking, as though the furniture is also weary of festival nights. Yet, no one leaves them empty. Every available surface is claimed, even overturned barrels and broken carts. You see one man nodding off while straddling a wheelbarrow, head bobbing dangerously, but still upright enough to pass the test. People whisper about him in admiration, as though balance were proof of piety. As dawn approaches, the snoring grows louder, more determined, as if the whole village is competing to see who can rattle the rafters. Dogs wander freely, sniffing mugs and licking plates, but even they respect the arrangement, curling at the feet of their human companions rather than climbing into laps. The animals, at least, understand the ritual. When the first rooster crows, eyelids flutter open. No one admits to having slept. They stretch, yawn, pat their thighs, and claim they were simply resting their eyes. Upright posture gives them the alibi. No matter how glazed their faces, no matter how stiff their joints, they can claim they participated in the holy vigil of sitting. The benches empty slowly, each figure peeling away, still clutching mugs, crumbs, and instruments. By mid-morning, the square looks normal again, save for the lingering smell of mead and the impression of bodies pressed into wood. And you? You rise with the rest, rubbing the crick in your neck, your head throbbing like a church bell rung too many times. You shuffle home, certain of one thing. No matter how wild the festival becomes, no matter how much mead flows, no matter how fiercely the fiddlers play, you'll never be caught sprawled on the ground like an animal. Sitting upright is survival, but on nights like these, it is also a matter of pride. Your bed is not just where you sleep, it's where you display who you are, or at least who you'd like everyone to believe you are. The market might judge you by your turnips, the parish by your confessions, but your neighbors, they judge you by your bed. More cushions means straighter spine, and straighter spine means you have both wealth and virtue. A sagging pallet stuffed with old straw places you firmly in the category of hopeless peasant. But 3 cushions stacked high, stitched in bright colors, and suddenly you're the sort of person whose dreams are whispered about in the square. You perch yourself against your own sorry excuse for a cushion, which is less cushion and more sack of rags, and you imagine what it must be like to rest against velvet. They say nobles sit upright against cushions so thick they look like fortresses, pillows embroidered with threads imported from far-off lands, each one a declaration of superiority. When visitors glimpse such beds, they don't see sleep, but they see status. Wealth piled not on tables or walls, but behind the back of someone who hasn't mucked a stall in their life. The gossip writes itself. A neighbor gains a second cushion, and suddenly the town speculates. Did her husband trade more grain? Did her son marry? Someone wealthy? Did she sneak a cushion from the manor house laundry? A new cushion can shift a family's reputation overnight. Upright posture becomes effortless with enough padding, and effortless posture looks a lot like moral superiority. People mutter that those with straight spines surely have straight souls, as though a pillow stitched by servants could cleanse generations of petty sins. When you visit a house, you feel the hierarchy instantly. In the corner, the poor press themselves against splintered walls, their backs aching, their cushions thin enough to show bone through fabric. In the center, merchants boast with layered seats, cushions stacked like loaves, each one firmer than the last. And in the highest chambers, nobles recline upright against cushions taller than a man's arm, servants fluffing them, so the illusion of holiness and wealth remains intact. The bed is not for sleep, it is for performance, an altar of fabric and feathers. Of course, the irony is that too many cushions cause their own disasters. You've heard tales of nobles buried in pillows so soft they woke with necks bent like broken reeds, or of courtiers suffocated in their own feather heaps. Yet no one dares admit it. To complain about cushions is to complain about wealth itself, and wealth is never questioned. Better to wake with a crooked neck than risk being seen as less upright, less saintly, less enviable. Meanwhile, you shift on your hard sack of grain, trying to mimic the noble angle with only bones and stubbornness for support. Upright still matters, even without the pillows to make it easy. You tell yourself that true virtue comes from suffering, that saints never needed cushions embroidered with golden thread. Still, when you see your neighbor flaunting her second cushion in the daylight, you feel a pang. Because in this world, even sleep is another chance for comparison. So you sit, upright as you can manage, knowing that someone will gossip about your posture, no matter what. If you lean too much, they'll whisper about laziness. If you slump, they'll mutter about sin. If you balance carefully, propped by nothing more than grit, you'll be dismissed as invisible. Unless, of course, you get a cushion. Then, suddenly, they'll all notice you. And maybe that is the cruelest truth of all. In the medieval night, surrounded by fleas and smoke, what people remember most is not who dreamed of angels or who snored like demons. They remember whose back looked straightest against a pile of cushions. And in the morning, When the gossip flows faster than the ale, you'll know your spine alone will never be enough. You grow up learning that beds are battlegrounds, and posture is the weapon. From the first time you try to stretch yourself flat in the straw, a hand swoops down, grabs your ear, and yanks you upright with the fury of 1,000 ancestors. Do you want demons climbing into your throat? Your grandmother snaps, spitting into the shadows for emphasis. You're still half asleep, but you understand one thing. Lying down is treachery, and you will be punished for it, even if you're only 5. Children never win. You wriggle, you test the boundaries. You think maybe tonight you'll sneak into the forbidden luxury of lying flat like the cat on the hearth. And yet, every time, someone catches you. A mother's shrill voice cuts through the dark. A father's hand swats your leg. A cousin giggles as they sit taller and accuse you of trying to die early. The shame stings worse than the smack. Upright is not only survival, it is discipline, drilled into you like prayers and chores. Adults remind you endlessly that posture is the foundation of morality. A slouching child is a lazy child, one doomed to fall behind in harvest or prayer. A lying down child is worse, already halfway to sin. First you sleep flat, the elders say. Then you'll drink too much. Then you'll steal. Then you'll burn in hell. The path from posture to damnation is short and steep, at least according to the wrinkled voices that scold you by firelight. You roll your eyes when they can't see, but deep down, you don't dare risk it. Every generation piles on its own layer of warnings. Grandparents tell you about cousins who choked to death in their sleep because they reclined. Parents remind you of saints who proved their holiness by staying vertical. Neighbors share gossip about children who lay flat and dreamed of the devil. These stories become bedtime chains, wrapping tighter each time they're repeated. Soon, you're not just sitting upright because you're told to. You're sitting upright because you're convinced that the moment you don't, something clawed and awful will claim you. And yet, children rebel. Always. You've tried lying flat more than once, heart pounding, eyes darting toward the door in case someone comes. At first, the forbidden comfort is bliss. You sink, your back loosens, your body sighs as though it has been waiting for this since birth. But then comes the dread. Every creak of the rafters sounds like a demon's footstep. Every gust of wind feels like a hand pressing on your chest. By the time you bolt upright again, sweat-soaked and trembling, you've convinced yourself the old stories were true. Comfort never lasts. The cycle continues as you grow. You find yourself parroting the same lines you hated as a child. When younger siblings try to sprawl, you pinch them, scold them, warn them that flat sleepers are asking for death. Part of you does it to protect them. Part of you does it to protect yourself. Because if they fall into the habit, then the whole family looks suspect. And nothing spreads faster than gossip about a household that doesn't know how to sit. One day, you will be the one snapping at your own children, telling them not to lie like pigs, insisting that upright posture is the thin line between respectability and ruin. You'll hear your grandmother's voice in your own, and you'll realize that habits are heavier than straw, heavier than wood, heavier than the blankets you never truly share. Habits are the inheritance passed down more faithfully than land or coin. And so, generation after generation, the posture persists. Children learn to fear lying flat, not just because of the scoldings, but because fear itself hardens into bone. Upright becomes instinct, second nature, as natural as breathing. The thought of lying flat in bed is no longer a temptation, but a shiver of disgust, the way you'd recoil from spoiled milk. You know it doesn't make sense. You know cats stretch flat without consequence, and pigs sprawl in mud and wake squealing but alive. But you aren't allowed to copy animals. You're human, and humans prove it by sitting straight, night after night, backs aching, eyes half shut, children whimpering when they tip sideways and are snapped upright again. That is the rhythm of life, the rhythm of families. And in the morning, When you shuffle into the day with stiff limbs, you glance at the next generation yawning beside you and know the lesson has already taken root. They won't lie down, not because they don't want to, but because they've already been taught what happens if they do. The healer arrives with a flourish, cart creaking, bells tied to his mule jingling, as though salvation itself were coming down the muddy road. He wears a cloak that might once have been red, though it is now mostly the color of spilled soup, and he waves a stick crowned with feathers. Children chase after him, laughing, and the adults gather warily, waiting to hear what miracle or nonsense he has to offer. He shouts loudly enough for the saints to hear, "Friends, you've been sleeping wrong your entire lives. The true cure, the modern way, is to lie flat." The silence that follows is almost sacred. Then the booing begins. It starts with an old woman clutching her cane, muttering that she knew at once he smelled of heresy. It spreads to the crowd, a wave of outrage, louder than the market on feast day. People shake their heads, spit into the dirt, cry out that demons sent him, because everyone knows the danger of lying flat. You drown, you choke, you invite hags to sit on your chest. You look like a corpse waiting for burial. And here stands a stranger telling you to stretch yourself into death's pose on purpose. The healer insists he has proof. He points to his assistant, a wide-eyed youth who flops onto the ground like a happy dog. "See how rested he looks," the man proclaims. But all anyone notices is how corpse-like the boy seems, stretched stiff as though ready for the shroud. The baker's wife crosses herself. Someone throws a cabbage. The healer dodges and keeps shouting about health, blood flow, balance of humors. Lying flat allows the body to align with the earth, he declares. That only makes it worse. Align with the earth? The worms live there. The grave lives there. A blacksmith bellows from the back. If lying flat were good, why do we bury people that way? The crowd cheers at the logic. Children jeer at the assistant still lying motionless in the dirt, daring him to twitch like a corpse. He does not rise, determined to prove his master's point, but it only makes villagers mutter about possession. The healer changes tactics. He brags of distant lands where nobles recline fully, stretched on velvet like kings of Rome. But the mention of foreigners sparks even more distrust. People hiss that foreign habits bring plagues, that nothing good ever came from across the sea but war and bad wine. A shepherd leans forward and calls the healer a pig lover, since pigs lie flat in the mud. That seals it. Being accused of imitating pigs is worse than being called a thief. By now, the healer is red in the face, feathers of his staff trembling as he waves it furiously. "You're clinging to superstition," he cries. "Upright. Sleep cripples your bones and shrivels your spirit." The crowd answers with laughter. Because cripples or not, everyone here has managed to live long enough to farm, marry, bicker, and drink. And if shriveled spirits are the cost of survival, so be it. No one wants to gamble with drowning in their sleep, just to follow a stranger's fashion. Finally, the healer tries one last time, lowering his voice as though sharing a secret. "Lying flat," he whispers, "will make you dream sweeter." The crowd goes silent for a heartbeat, and you almost think he's swayed them. Then an old man spits and growls. "Sweet dreams are for sinners. Upright dreams are holy." The booing erupts again, fiercer than before. In the end, the healer is driven out with jeers and thrown turnips. His assistant scrambles upright, finally abandoning the corpse act, and the villagers cheer at the sight. Upright once more, he looks human again. The healer shuffles off down the road, muttering about ignorance, feathers drooping in defeat. That night, you sit as always, propped against the wall, your body aching but your soul at ease. The healer's words linger in your mind, tempting in their strange modernity. But when you glance at your neighbors, at your family sitting upright beside you, you know the truth. Better stiff and holy than flat and damned. Better upright, with your breath still rattling, than stretched out like a corpse waiting for the worms. The rooster crows in the dark, as though he too has never known the sweetness of lying flat. His call pierces the air like a reminder that dawn is always closer than you think, even if your body swears the night has lasted for years. You sit there upright, your back against rough wood, your legs tucked awkwardly under a blanket that smells faintly of goat, and you realize there was never a choice in the matter. Sitting upright is not preference. It is the only way you belong to this world that insists on its own rules. Rules of air, thick with smoke, food heavy as bricks, beds crowded with relatives, pests, priests, and fears. Your belly groans with rye bread, that dense slab of survival masquerading as dinner, and you know if you dared to stretch flat, it would rise back against you like an enemy. It swells, shifts, and grumbles, reminding you that food is never just food here. It is ballast, it is fuel, it is punishment for still being alive. Upright, you can at least pat your chest, burp discreetly, and pretend your digestion is part of prayer. Flat, you would choke on your own supper and be found with peas spilling out of your mouth like an offering to demons. Beside you, the rooster mutters in his sleep, feathers shuffling, his head twitching against the beam. Even he prefers to perch high, upright, chest puffed, like a noble keeping vigil. Perhaps he too fears the worms. Perhaps he knows instinctively that to lie flat is to invite the soil too early. You share the night with him as with kin, listening to the rhythm of his breath. Between his snores and your neighbor's farts, the hall is alive with its own strange symphony. A flat sleeper might miss it, sealed away in shallow dreams, but upright you catch it all. Every creak, every whisper, every muffled prayer. You think of the healer, still wandering somewhere with his feathers and promises of modern ways, and you laugh quietly to yourself. If he could see you now, sitting stubborn as stone, refusing the temptation of a flat palate, he would call you backward. But backward is survival here. Backward is lungs that still fill with air, eyes that snap open at the sound of boots outside, hands ready to clutch a pitchfork or swat a flea. Forward is drowning in dreams and never waking up. Forward is trusting your belly to behave when it has never once behaved. The truth is, you cannot even imagine lying down. Corpses lie down. Foreigners lie down. Animals in the mud lie down. But you remain in this crooked, uncomfortable posture that has become second nature, as natural as drawing breath. And though your spine protests, though your neck aches against the grain sack pillow, you cling to it because it anchors you. Every story you've been told, about spirits pressing on your chest, about priests catching you unready, about wolves prowling the edge of town, comes back in the silence of the night, and you see that sitting is more than safety. It is identity. When the rooster calls again, you are already halfway to waking. That is the point. Upright, you are never fully surrendered. You are always prepared for dawn, for trouble, for gossip, for God. And even if your stomach is full of rye, even if your body screams for the softness of lying flat, you hold your position because medieval life does not allow otherwise. The rooster, the bread, the smoke, the noise, all of it conspires to keep you sitting, alive in discomfort, awake in half-sleep, waiting for morning to arrive and demand work again. So you sit. You always sit. Through the long night, in the company of fowl, family, and fear, you endure the crooked posture that defines you. And though it seems absurd, though it aches in every bone, you understand in your heart that this is what life has asked of you. Upright, stubborn, watchful, never stretched out, never surrendered. Just you, the rooster, and your full belly of rye, all three of you perched against the dark, unwilling to tempt fate by lying down.